the beginning of that part of the agenda.
I don't really know if we do it. If we do it now, we can go on your preamble there. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm happy to. That's great. Go ahead. Oh, I'll do the preamble, and then you're saying you'll. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Great. Welcome to the December 15th, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order concerning imposition on strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, meetings in the town of Upton are being conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. So today's meeting, we are going to, as always, open with public comment, go through some meeting minute approval. We have a couple of guest presentations, one from Governor's Landing, a development off of 140, one for the fiscal year 22 budget planning process. And then we'll move into board-specific discussion items around licensing, appointments, donations, some policy updates, plowing of private ways, and then we will go into the town manager report and updates. So before we go ahead and get started, Paul, why don't you open your meeting?
Well, in addition, the Finance Committee is posted to just to listen in and participate in the presentation by Kenny Costa, the Financial Director, regarding the fiscal 22 budget planning process. And we have 4 members. I don't see Nick here, but we have 4 members of the Finance Committee present. So at that, we'll call this meeting to order. I believe it is probably our intent here that we can adjourn following the discussion of the budget process, the Finance Committee at that. So.
Okay, great. We'll make sure we allow time for that. Derek, do we have folks from, or let's go through any public comment that folks have before we get started? Okay, hearing none, we will go to item 2.0, approval of the meeting minutes for November 17th and December 1st.
Is Steve good with the November 17th meeting?
Yes, I've had some time to read over the minutes, and yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we reflected the discussion we had regarding Maplewood Cemetery. So there's some good notes in there regarding that. So I'm good with the 17th. I guess my only question was on December 1st, there was some dialogue we had received from one of the residents. I don't know if we want to make any mention in the December 1st hearing minutes about, perhaps a list of chemicals that are stored on the facility. Anybody have any interest in adding that in there, or do you think the minutes are fine as they're written?
I think they're fine as they're written. That wasn't proposed or was on the agenda as part of the hearing process. And it shouldn't be reflected in the minutes.
I believe the list should not be, but I didn't know if you wanted to make mention of a list. Was the only thing.
No, I believe, Derek, didn't you put it on the town website?
As of today, the list that was provided by the railroad for chemicals that are being stored on the property is on the town website, yes.
So I don't think it should be reflected in the minutes because it wasn't part of this discussion, nor was it on the agenda for that night.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I agree with Maureen. So I'll take a motion, unless there's additional conversation on the minutes for November 17th and December 1st. If we want to have more discussion about December 1st, we can certainly take another look at those and approve them at a later date if folks would like to do that, I'm comfortable with the way that they're written.
I'm all set with the way that they're written.
Okay, why don't we just motion both dates? That's fine.
I move that we approve the November 17th and the December 1st meeting minutes. Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Second the motion, Stephen Metalian, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Show that as unanimous action. Next, we have a presentation from Governor's Landing. Is that, do we have the folks here for that, Derek?
Yes, yes. Mr. Roloffs is here. I think he's representing the Governor's Landing project.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So thank you folks for joining. I know that you've been working with Derek to prepare for today's discussion. He mentioned that we are looking at about a 10-minute time slot, given the density of our overall budget. We want to make sure, most importantly, that we cover and get to any questions that board members may have or others may have. So please bear that in mind. And with that, I'll hand it over to, I guess that's going to be you, Jeff.
That is, thank you.
Sure.
I'm just trying to allow access here so that I can share my screen.
You should have it, Jeff. I made you a presenter. Tell me if that's not working.
You did. Let me just see then if I can get into it that way. Accessibility features allow access and security and privacy. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry about this. I didn't know I had a setting here to accessibility.
Jeff, would it be easier if I pull up your slides and you?
Yeah,
just
maybe.
advance
Sorry
them
about
up?
that. I don't know what the settings
just-
that I need to do.
Yeah, just give me. I'm trying to pull them up. All right, let's see here. Okay, are we good? Everybody can see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. And Derek, if you're controlling this, then I'll just cue you to walk through the slides once we get moving here. So thank you all for allowing us to come present tonight. Jeff Roloffs, I'm outside counsel to Fafford Real Estate and Development. With me this evening is Sean Malone with Oak Consulting Group. He's the project engineer. Derek, if you want to just go to the next slide. I'm going to start by just getting you oriented to the project site, which is right off of Route 140, south of Town Center on your way down to Milford, in between Route 140 and the railroad tracks that are over near Grove Street, as shown on this figure. Next slide, Derek. And that's just another aerial view of the same locus. It's an undeveloped area of land, as you can see here. It's got wetlands and it's primarily wooded. Next slide. The property, as you can see from this figure, this is a zoning map. It actually has two zoning districts within it. The general business zone is a 200-foot zone that is parallel to Route 140. And then behind that, as you're coming into the site, is the single residence C zone, as shown on this figure. And importantly, the commercial and industrial zone abuts this property to the south. And that's important for reasons you'll see in a minute. Next slide. So this area, or this is just a zoomed in version, so you could see the zoning districts a little bit more clearly. Next slide, Derek. The Central Mass Regional Planning Commission has designated this area of Upton as a priority development area. The town's master plan highlights it as an excellent a site or an area that's excellent, has excellent development suitability. The primary obstacle that's has been faced by us, my client, and properties to the south in the commercial and industrial zone is the lack of infrastructure, primarily water and sewer. Next slide. This is just an image from the town's or the Regional Planning Commission's report showing some of the planned sewer in this area. And you can see on the right side of this figure in purple are the proposed sewer lines that would run down Milford Street at some point in the future. Next slide. And you'll have these slides, by the way, if you want to look at them more closely at your convenience. So for the development of this property, so a lot of the images you'll see now, we've reoriented the site so that north is to the right. Derek, we lost you. You're in your emails here. There we go. So this is the project site. Milford Street's at the bottom. You can see the 200-foot general business zone is parallel to Milford Street, and then the single residence zone above that. There's a lot of history in previous efforts to develop this site going back to the 2000s. We were in litigation for years fighting for a single family residential development out there. We actually secured the permits and then the market tanked, so it was never built. Other considerations have come into play since then, including these listed here. The town's housing production plan calls for an increased diversity of housing in Upton. It's not encouraging just building out more single families. The town desires more affordable and moderately priced housing. There's a strong demand for senior housing, and there's no demand for commercial uses from my client's perspective within the general business zone. Next slide, Derek. In the last couple, 2 or 3 years, we've been working closely with a number of different groups in town with respect to possible development scenarios. We've looked into different townhouse development possibilities there, just in the front of the property with single family to the rear, townhouse throughout. And ultimately, we've come around to a concept that would involve townhouses and senior housing, which I'll get to in a minute. We spent a year plus in front of the planning board in a pre-application process with them, providing them with information. They had a peer review consultant involved with that review process. We got feedback from the Conservation Commission and the Upton's Affordable Housing Trust during that process. The pre-application process has been completed. So from the planning board's perspective, we're ready to go into permitting for the project. We also went to the Conservation Commission to nail down the resource area boundaries. And Sean Malone's had quite a few discussions over the past year with Dennis and Derek as related to water and sewer. And we'll get to that in a second. Next slide. The current project concept is shown here, and obviously it's a concept where it's what we would come into zoning the permitting for. It involves in the single residence C zone a senior housing development with 110 units, involving 10 single family homes, and then 50 duplex buildings. 19 acres of open space would be protected, which is more than 30% of the site. The project would entail 8 off-site affordable units, which we're proposing in order to take advantage of a density bonus associated with that. That part of the development would require a planning board special permit and obviously a public hearing process. In the front of the property near Milford Street, this concept shows 48 townhouse units, all 2-bedroom units, mostly in fourplexes. The project overall involves bringing water and sewer to the project site to serve the development. The general business zone part of the project would require a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So combined, what we're talking about here is 158 units. Most of those would be 2-bedroom units and 8 off-site affordable units. Next slide. There are a lot of benefits associated with this concept as compared to a single family development. Significant financial benefit to the town. I'll show you some calculations on that in a second. But we estimate more than $750,000 net annually after taking into account the modest increase in school system costs and town service costs. The project would increase the housing variety in town. It involves a better utilization of the general business zone land than if we were to try to do some commercial work there. It's a clustered development with expanded open space protection. And again, it involves one way or the other getting water and sewer to this area of town. Next slide. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty on this. You can look at it later, but these are the financial figures that we were sort of using to come up with the estimates for the financial gain to the town. These numbers are a couple years old, but what we did is we tried to estimate the annual real estate tax revenue associated with this project. There's auto excise tax revenue. We've subtracted from that some predicted annual education costs projected by an estimate of how many students there would be here. Remember that most of the units out here are 2-bedroom units, and they don't tend to generate a lot of school children. So the costs are moderate. The revenue to the town is significant. Again, you can look at the details later. I'm happy to go back to this if you want. Next slide, Derek. So this gets to the water sewer infrastructure, and this I'm going to end up turning this over to Sean, but this has been the topic of conversation between Sean, Dennis, and Derek most recently, and it's really the issue that sort of kept us from going into the formal permitting process, because it's one we want to sort out with the town before we get into permitting. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Sean Malone.
Thank you. Good evening, all. I'll just quickly walk through this and explain what we're looking at here. And this is a schematic of the proposed sewer and sewer options. It's sewer and water, I should say, that they'd run together for the project. The first one I'll mention and take a look at is what's shown in purple up towards the top of the plan. That is what I would say our current plan is for providing sewer and water to this site. And what that would require, it's about 2,000 feet is what you're looking at there. Approximately 700 feet of that would be within the Grove Street and Station Street right away. And this would be entirely a gravity sewer connecting to the pump station on Station Street. And again, together that would also run water with that as well. Moving down, we'd then look at the green section. And the green section is water and sewer that would then be able to be extended beyond our site up to, we have a small pod of 3 buildings that may be part of this project. And for reference, that's right next to the rug guy, if you all know him. And so then that green line could then be connected to the same gravity sewer and run down into the Station Street station. So at this point, and then the blue line would be a potential expansion of this system extending up into the industrial area. At this point, Dennis approached us and we began the discussion of, rather than the purple line through the railroad right-of-way, which the applicant already has rights to, going down Milford Street, and that's what's shown in the red line as well as in the profile at the bottom of the page. And what that would be is about a mile, about 6,000 linear feet of sewer and water coming up from the town to serve the site. So it's about 3 times as long. It would be entirely within the town right away. In the spring, we did about 50 ledge probes along Milford Street, and we did discover there is some ledge in the area. So the costs of this Milford Street run were about $1.6 million more than what we're contemplating for the purple alternative. But either one of these alternatives could help serve future needs up into the industrial district. I think that I'll leave it there for just a brief overview. Certainly can answer any more detailed questions that the board has as we go on. Jeff?
Next slide, Derek. And these are just an overview of points that Sean's already walked through. I do want to point out, though, that there are DOT plans right now to mill and overlay Milford Street in year 20, that should be 2022. And so there is a timing issue here, because if we're going to do work in Milford Street, we want to get ahead of that DOT project, obviously, and get it done ahead of time and let them repair the road afterwards. Next slide. So the issue here that I think sort of Derek had mentioned maybe to the selectmen, and the selectmen sort of expressed the view that they wanted to learn more about this project. The issue that brought us to this point is what do we do with that $1.6 million additional cost associated with putting the sewer and water within Milford Street? And so the basic concept from Fafford's perspective is it's willing to go that route to put it in Milford Street. It doesn't, there's really no benefit to Fafford to do that, but it's willing to do that and to cover, you know, basically the cost of what it would be paying for if it were to just do it the way that it had proposed through the cross-country route. So for the $1.6 million additional cost, we've been trying to get creative about how we can cover that through some town collaboration here. And these are some ideas that we threw out. Number one, water sewer connection fees. We're proposing that those be waived for the first 50 units. That'd be approximately $12,000 per unit, worth $600,000. We'd want a rate cap for future connections. We could do more units, I suppose, but the problem with getting sort of recouping costs in that manner is that it takes a lot of time. It happens over a long time period. For the affordable units, the Housing Trust had expressed an interest in 10% or more affordable units. What we're proposing is that we constrain the number of units to 10 associated with this project, and that we'd be allowed to provide those off-site. If we can do that and then not have to provide another 5 units or more, there's value, obviously, because there's a cost associated with doing that. So if the town and the permitting boards would allow us to constrain the number of affordable units to 10, we see value in that as outlined here. And then we'd be looking for the town to make a direct contribution. And that doesn't mean a direct financial contribution. Obviously, it would be best if the town could secure a grant through the Mass Works grant program or some other grant program. The town might have access to supplies or materials that it could provide, that would provide the other $500,000 worth of value, maybe combined with a grant. So that's another component. And then there is associated with the Milford Street route, primarily because of all the bedrock and the blasting that's going to be associated with that work. There are some uncertainties there. Fafford installed a sewer over the last few years in Bellingham, and it encountered a lot more. It had to do a lot more blasting. There was a lot more ledge that it encountered than anyone had ever anticipated. And so we just want to work something out with the town where if there were some significant unforeseen costs, that we would be able to share in that sort of contingency. So these are the concepts that we had communicated to Dennis and Derek. We're not looking for the selectmen to respond to this tonight or come up with or make any decisions, but I wanted to get this in front of you. We wanted to be here to answer any questions that you had. We wanted to make sure that you had an understanding about where we were in the permitting process and what we had in mind here as a development concept. Derek, can you just go to the next slide? I think we're pretty much set, but yeah, I mean, so where we are in the posture right now is we would be ready to start our permitting with the planning board and the zoning board right now if we were to propose the cross-country sewer and water route. But if the town really does want to move forward with this Milford Street route, we're happy to defer filing for now. We'd like to work something out with the town that works for everybody. And if we're able to do that, then we'd have 3 months of design and engineering work ahead of us. And we can then start the permitting process, which we would expect to take roughly 3 months. So that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the information. We've seen, obviously some of this in the past, but it's good to have it all encapsulated in one place as things have been evolving. Maureen or Steve, what questions do you have? We'll start there, please.
I do have a question on the Grove Street, Station Street. What is the cost? Did I miss what the cost of the construction was for that?
No,
You didn't. Yeah, go ahead, Sean. Why don't you explain the cost estimate effort that went into this?
yeah, so we had the different scenarios priced out by a professional cost estimator, and then Dennis had us be in contact with the town's engineer, Ty and Bond, and they did an estimate. And through those two estimates, they're landing pretty close to the same, but we're figuring that portion of the project, or that portion of the sewer and water, would be in the neighborhood of $700,000.
So the cost estimate to do it on 140 is 1.6 million?
No, that would be about 2.3 million. So the delta between the two is the 1.6.
And we haven't got any approvals from planning, zoning, and Concom?
No,
They're
we
just
haven't. We've only been in front of the planning board on a pre-application process, which was a pretty extensive process. But in order to go in and get permits from those boards, they wanted us to work out the sewer and water route before we engaged in that, because there's a significant engineering effort associated with putting those permitting plans together. So like I said, we could start that process right now. But if we weren't able to work out something with the town, what we would be presenting to the boards is a water and sewer route that goes cross-country through the railroad right of way to our property. If the town wants us to go Milford Street, then we just need to sort out how we're going to make that happen. And then we would fold the details of that sewer and water route into our permitting plans to then present to the planning board and zoning board. So we're trying to resolve this issue before we go to those boards.
So you have an approval from the railroad to go through their property?
Yeah, we have an easement, which we secured many years ago, actually. Yep.
All right.
A follow-up question to something, Maureen, a point that Maureen brought up. When you're talking about that $2.3 million construction cost, you've got two components there, water and sewer. Water is at I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of what's the Gasco fuel station at the bottom of the hill.
Yep.
So, and sewer, on the other hand, is more or less in front of the old Holy Angels Church, 3 Milford Street. So when you do that breakdown, how are you calculating, what is your water cost, what is your sewer cost? Because you mentioned 6,000 feet, is that combined? Because it would not be 6,000 feet from 3 Milford Street to 151 Milford Street. That definitely would not be 6,000 feet. So I'm just kind of curious what that math looks like.
Yes, yeah, no, and you are correct. And there's a very detailed estimate that I think we had submitted it to DPW. But in short, yes, the water number is only to, I think it's around the area of Prospect Street, somewhere in that area. So that number is in 6,000 feet. That's approximately, I think, 2,500 feet. The sewer number is a gravity sewer down into we would need a pump station. And again, we're looking somewhere in that area of Prospect Street. So there would be a gravity sewer down to Prospect Street of about 2,500 linear feet. then a pump station, and then a sewer force main that would then cross the bridge into downtown, as well as a gravity sewer from the other side of the end of the bridge going back down in the pump station. So your point is valid. The numbers, it isn't just a straight line, 6,000 linear feet. There's more sewer, less water. But we can certainly provide the board of selectmen that data as well.
Okay, and then a couple of things that kind of jumped out at me. You had mentioned in the presentation, I think one of the earlier slides, that there was no commercial interest or no commercial units, or what was your definition there? And I guess why is my question. We've kind of identified before various boards and other topics, we've talked about the homes that have been built along Route 140, and we've looked at that as lost opportunity. 140 is our business district. So if we're going to take our business district and you're going to put 96 townhouses on it, how's that a good thing? And how are we not shooting ourselves in the foot by allowing something like that?
So
And then I guess
I'll try to answer that
real
best
quick. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll try to answer that just based on what my client has told me in the marketing analysis that they've done. And they've said for years that they don't see any demand for commercial space in this area of town, at least not where the project site is. And so the concern would be if they were to build commercial buildings on spec, they don't have any confidence that anyone would want to lease them or buy them. Residential development, on the other hand, there is a strong demand for, and particularly the townhouse format, the 2-bedroom format, and they're selling these units in other towns very successfully. The benefit to the town is there is a very clear financial revenue stream associated with the residential development and very low, incremental education and other town service costs associated with them because they're 2-bedroom units. They're not the 5-bedroom single family home units that would tend to drive up education costs, for example.
I think that if you have other questions, I mean, we can have a conversation back and forth. So,
Yeah, let me just throw out one quick one that just threw out. It kind of jumped off the page at me, which was the 8 affordable units. Obviously, it's a very low number given the size of the project. But the other point that I wanted to make is you mentioned that those would be off-site units. Why off-site? It would appear that, in my experience, most of the projects that we have in town where we've made some concessions, we've always had those units be on-site. So what would be the advantage to having them off-site?
Yep. So, I mean, it's really, it's probably a financial benefit to my client to keep the uniformity of the development here and to be able to sell market rate units here. But then find, and it's done this in other towns where it finds units that it can purchase, improve, impose the restrictions needed to qualify the unit for the subsidized housing inventory, and then qualify those as affordable units off-site. The other thing with this project is because it's 2 projects, the 8 units associated with the senior housing project in the rear are being proposed as part of our density bonus calculation. And one of the things we talked to the planning board about there was the possibility of, instead of building the affordable units into the senior housing portion of it, because that does create qualification issues in the state program, but it is possible to put those 8 units into the townhouse development in the general business zone. So in that scenario, they're part of this overall project, but they're offsite in relation to the senior housing part of it. Now, preferably from my client's perspective, they'd be able to commit to 8 affordable offsite somewhere else in town if those are available, if they can actually find them. And then if they can't, they would, the backup would be to incorporate them into the townhome development in the front part of the project.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Great. Tell me more about the current zoning, because I know that it's currently zoned for business or commercial and industrial along the road there. You know, obviously it sounds like the developer is not interested or doesn't feel like that's an area where there's enough demand to warrant doing that. It's just not profitable. I'm wondering from a development perspective over the long run, if it just means that it's not time to develop that area. And as a town, that's been zoned in a particular way based on our aesthetic and our long-term vision for what we see the town looking like. And I think that the folks that put the zoning in place anticipated that, you know, this wouldn't all be developed tomorrow. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't have any business development plans for the future. So to use up prime commercial and industrial real estate for residential buildings in an area that's currently zoned for commercial and industrial, you know, it seems counter to our zoning intentions over the long run. And it's certainly unfortunate that the owner has a property that, you know, isn't developable based on the current zoning uses. Obviously, it would be a lot easier for them to put something together if that was something that could be profitable for them. My understanding is that this type of a development isn't allowed in that area. Is that valid? Would a zoning rule be changed, or tell me about that part of the project?
Yep, sure. So it actually is allowed even though it's a general business zone, the type of townhome development that we've proposed is consistent with your existing zoning bylaw, but it can only be allowed by a special permit from the ZBA. At one point in our efforts with the planning board, we had presented a townhome development throughout this entire property, and we were exploring their receptiveness to supporting some zoning changes that would allow that project to happen. And after a few meetings, the message we got from the board was, look, we don't want to go to town meeting and change the zoning. Figure out something you can do here that complies with our current zoning. Our job is to apply the standards. So we heard that and we went back, and that's how we developed the plan that we're showing now. So what we're showing is a project that does comply with your zoning requirements. It's not a use allowed by right. It requires a special permit from the ZBA, but it's allowed by special permit.
Mm-hmm. And what was the difference between what wasn't allowed and what you've now proposed? I'm not familiar with that. What was proposed that wasn't allowed? Was it, you said that was just didn't cluster development?
Yeah, we had at one point proposed to build townhomes, fourplex structured townhomes in the single residence C zoning district.
Mm-hmm.
That would have required a zoning change, because that's not even allowed in that zone by special permit from the planning board or the zoning board. So we dropped that.
And pushed all those up to the street, and then put the other units up off the street.
Right. So we just kept we retained the townhome development near the street, which is consistent with your zoning.
Mm-hmm.
And we proposed the senior housing development in the single residence zone, which is also consistent with your zoning,
mm-hmm.
as long as we can secure a special permit from the planning board.
Yeah. And why senior housing? Just curious. We have, you know, at least 200 to 300 units of 55 plus housing that has been and is being put up in town over the past year and is currently being put up. Is that something that you were under the impression we needed more of, or why 55 plus versus just opening it up?
It was primarily, I think, based on the marketing analysis and the view that there's going to be a strong demand for these units, combined with the alternatives. I'm not sure if there was another alternative in the zoning bylaw that we had compared it to that would have been something different than single family. But, you know, another concept that we had explored was townhome in the front and then as of right, single family development in the rear. But the senior housing project it's better for my client, but it's also just more consistent with the housing production plan of the town to generate more diversity of housing.
Okay.
So my client thinks there's a strong demand for it, despite the fact we do know we're familiar with the other projects that you have in town, but we think there's going to be plenty of demand for these type of units. I mean, it's a growing demand.
And why was it that you moved away from the single family development, the original one that you had the approvals for?
I mean, it was partly what we thought the town wanted, but also it's, you know, it's fewer units. They would be obviously single family homes of any size though. So on the financial analysis, I'm not sure what the breakout is, but for the single family unit, I don't know if you were involved in any of the litigation that we had to go through to secure those permits, but to secure the single family development approvals, there were subdivision proceedings, there's a lot of wetlands back there. And so in a single family context, you're not clustering the units generally. So you either have to drop some of the units or find a way to squeeze it. And then you're getting into a program that's similar, you know, in the senior housing program, you've got the flexibility to cluster the buildings because your zoning bylaw allows you to do that. You don't have to maintain these large lot sizes. You can cluster the buildings, protect more open space, more greater setbacks to the resource areas. It's just a better development. You're getting more units in a smaller footprint.
Yeah, if that's the type of housing that the town is looking for and in need of and wants to put in that zone. The front, those units along, and I know we're not here to talk about you've been in front of the planning board, so I appreciate that, but given that you don't have the approvals from them, I'm going to ask the question. Those units along the road, are those like they end up looking like triple deckers, is that right? Like they have in Worcester?
So that's a good question. So when we came to the planning board, we were proposing initially these fourplex units that Fafford's building in Ashland. And you might be familiar with those. I know Derek went up and took a look at them. My client really likes those units and they've been selling like crazy in Ashland. They've been very successful. But I think Derek's feedback and some other feedback we got was that, you know, that he wasn't really excited about that particular style, and I'm not sure the board was or wasn't. I think if we were to go into permitting with this concept, that we'd be looking at different units. And I think that there's also there's a height limit in that general business zone that isn't really very receptive to or compatible with your normal residential structures because it's more tailored to commercial structures. But towards the tail end of the planning board process, we did start to explore different townhouse style buildings that would be significantly lower than the units that are actually depicted in the plans you saw this evening. So that, you know, the architectural design would be a big part of the review. And the planning board was I should say, our interpretation from the planning board's feedback was that they liked this project. They liked both components of it. They liked the fact that it was going to provide more moderately priced housing and that, you know, a lot of 2-bedroom units. But, you know, when we go back into zoning and permitting, architectural review, landscape, they made a big deal about the streetscape. They want to make sure that people driving by this development are going to see something nice. It's not going to be commercial, but it's going to be something that the town's going to be happy with. So, you know, those are all details to get fleshed out during the permitting process.
Okay, great, thanks. I appreciate the digression. So back to the water and sewer. It looks like if you do the cross-country route that we could head south with that as a continuation to extend that infrastructure in the southerly direction. Would it not be able to go north as well? I don't know how that would work, right? Obviously, for us having a gap from, you know, Upton Center all the way up to, you know, Governor's Landing is less than ideal, which is why we're looking at trying to work with you guys to do something along the roadway there. But if you did go cross-country, what would the ability for us to make that and extend that north if we decided to do that in the future or wanted to do that in the future?
Right. Sean, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, that would be possible. You still could add a pump station down at the bottom of the hill before you got to the bridge somewhere in there and be able to collect sewerage and pump it back up to the Governor's Landing and enter the gravity sewer. So it would be possible. I think that there may also be some redundancies in that. Versus, if the town were to construct all that, then you could just have the pump station pump it across the bridge as this proposal or this option that we have in front of us would do. So I guess the quick answer to your question, it's possible, but it wouldn't necessarily make that much sense because of the height of Governor's Landing versus Milford Street. It falls as you go to town.
Would it be gravity fed if you ran it along 140 up to Governor's Landing? Right, so you'd come down that hill into the center of town?
Right, so the option for Milford Street that we've been exploring would be a gravity sewer from Governor's Landing down the hill, and then you'd have to go into a pump station somewhere towards the bottom of the hill and pump across the stream, the brook there, where you have the bridge where you enter into town.
And you guys, okay, that's good to know. I learning about all of these infrastructure things as I get my feet wet here. As you go around the cross country, you said that you do have an easement there. Is that a recorded easement or just a verbal agreement that you have with the railroad, or?
No, I believe it's recorded. It's one that's been documented and secured for 10 plus years, I think.
Yeah.
We can get you a copy of that if the town wanted it. Yeah.
I'm just curious. I know it's been around a long time. Certainly predates me as well as all the litigation stuff. Go ahead, Maureen. It looks like you wanted to add something, please.
No, I would just like to see a cost estimate both on the 140 side and the across country side for both water and sewer that I believe he said our town engineers estimated. Is that correct?
So we've got estimates from estimators that my client retained, and then our estimates were peer reviewed by Tig and Bond for the town. So we've actually, Dennis and Derek have these estimates, but they're basically are two different sets of estimates. They don't totally line up, but they both show that a very similar increment in the cost difference between the cross-country route and the Milford Street route. So the delta under both sets of estimates is approximately 1.6 million, even though the numbers themselves are a little bit different. But we're certainly happy to share those with the board so you can sink your teeth into them. The details are there, though.
Because Dennis, would we have to build another pump station on the cross country one?
No, we wouldn't have to build another pump station, but we would have to probably put $750,000 to $1 million worth of renovations into the Station Street station to handle they're just about gonna, their calculations would pretty much max out Station Street. There would be no room for any extras. Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question and a couple of comments?
Yep,
I'll be brief. I know.
I'm going to open it up to you and Derek. So absolutely, yes, go ahead.
So first, I want to thank Sean and Jeff, and Sean especially and his team have done a lot of work on this. And my team and my staff have also done a lot of work. But I want to make something clear to the board is most of the work that my team has done has focused on trying to accomplish the water and the wastewater up 140. We have not taken a hard look at the cross country because we haven't given it a hard consideration. And I have a lot of questions about the cross country. I know that Sean and his team have prepared an estimate and they have gone back and forth with Ty and Bond about reconciling that estimate, but that estimate is based on their design of the cross country. And I just want to point out that we have scrutinized the design for 140. We have not scrutinized the design for cross country. And I have an awful lot of questions about if this board were to direct me to make that work. I have an awful lot of questions about the logistics of getting the water and the wastewater through that cross country easement. So I'm saying this because we keep talking about the 1.6 million. And although an awful lot of work went in, and I think the project has progressed, and it's probably not a mountain off, but I wouldn't hang my hat on the 1.6 million from my opinion. That's all I'm saying.
Nope, that's
Through the chair, if I could ask a question to Sean or Jeff, what is the width of the easement?
I'm not sure is it 20 foot, Jeff? I'm not sure 100% on that, Dennis.
So my question is simple. My question is simple because we require a 20-foot easement for a utility. So water would have a 20-foot easement, so we have 10 feet of space on both sides of the pipe to work on it. The same would go for a sewer. Sewer and water have to be, by code, 10 feet apart from each other. So if you're running water and sewer, I would think you have a 50-foot easement there to be able to keep them separated and run them so that we could work on them and still have an easement. And that's why I had that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is, but Dennis, I mean, we're obviously willing to work with you to help you understand better exactly what would be involved with the cross-country route. But like you, we've sort of been focused lately on trying to make the Milford Street sewer and water route work, because I think that even if we could make the cross-country route work, the town, I think, the message we've been getting from most town officials is it'd be really great if we could just install it in Milford Street. If we could find a way to make that happen, that would be great for the town. So we've been focused on trying to make that happen. And, you know, again, our sort of outline of ways to try to recoup some of the additional costs associated with that, it's not even an exact science. I mean, call it 1.6 or 1.1 or whatever. We're talking about, we're not looking for the town to just bond it and write a check for that amount. We're looking for sort of waiving some connection fees and trying to get grants. And, you know, we're open to ideas. We've been just brainstorming with you on how to do that. It's just hard for my client to, you know, it just wants to recoup some costs, where the benefit in running it up Milford Street from my client's perspective is that it's a great thing for the town. And from his perspective, though, he's got a good route already that he would be happy to use if we were just focused on this one development. But
no, I agreed. And I, like I said, an awful lot of work. And I just want to explain for the board's understanding that an awful lot of work has gone into trying to figure out the best way to get water and wastewater up 140. But the town hasn't taken a hard look at your proposal for cross country.
yep, it's fair.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
may I
There's one
comment?
other quick, if I could just make another quick point that's right along the same vein that we're speaking of now, is the Milford Street route has other significant advantages to the town as well, because it gives you the opportunity to pick up some of those other pieces. There's a parcel right across the street from the existing gas station. You know, there's been plans and rumors floating around for 20 years anyways that I can think of, you know, a strip plaza or a restaurant maybe, or some sort of a convenience store or something like that. So if water and sewer comes up 140, it unlocks some of those other parcels. There's a lot of older homes heading down that way on the left-hand side, and there's water on the left-hand side behind the station. So it may also be an opportunity to pick up water and sewer customers out of those existing homes. And then as you go up 140, there's 3 homes on the right-hand side. There's a big, large vacant piece of land there. And I'm not sure exactly what the boundary is where your property begins. But again, there's another piece of land that it would unlock as well. So, you know, it would seem to me that there's significant advantages, you know, on the municipal side to that infrastructure coming up Route 140. Just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
Brett, if I may, put my building committee hat on. As you know, we're working on a plan to put a library, combination library senior center on the parking lot in front of the playground. One of the big subjects of discussion and a major cost factor in this project is getting water and sewer from the site, from the project into the sewer, which connects in that manhole right in front of Holy Angels. It involves the crossing the bridge, and we've had, I don't think we have some definite cost numbers involved in that yet. Now, the water already is there, because the water goes up, as Mr. Materian indicated, it goes as far as Gasco. So the water is already on the side with respect to the building project. The water is already there. The issue becomes the sewer, because we have to get it off the property. It's almost impossible to, well, let's put it this way, it's not beneficial or feasible to have an on-site sanitary system there. So, you know, one of the main factors that we're facing is how to get the wastewater off the property. Now, should this materialize, you know, the gentleman's talking about getting this done before the state TIPS project goes through. Well, that would certainly be beneficial to the combination senior center library, should that ultimately materialize. You know, we're still in the planning stages and getting the drawings and schematics and all that and getting it ready to bring forward. And within a few weeks, we will be bringing that to the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, the Capital Budget Committee, and the Economic Development Committee. But, and as it relates to this conversation, yeah, having that water and sewer, or having the sewer on 140 is a great financial benefit to the cost of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek, did you have a question, or anyone else?
Yeah, and I'll try to keep my short questions brief. Jeff, going back to the chairman's point of the previous single-family residential that's already been approved, in that approval, did you have any units that were approved that were to be built out in the GB district?
We had three, I think there were 3 single-family homes shown in the general business district on that subdivision plan. And what I don't recall is whether or not that those were allowed by right, or if we needed to go to the ZBA to put those there. That was a long time ago, Derek, when I was looking into that question.
Well, I think it speaks to where the chairman was going, that, you know, the GB district was created for a purpose, and if we go ahead and build residential in it, even though there may not be market conditions today, in 20 years from now, there could be market conditions. And so it circles me back to your previous approval, and that if you didn't have homes built out in that GB district, then we certainly would have the ability to use that for commercial space sometime in the future. So I guess I'd like to learn more about that at some point, if you don't mind. And then my second question is, and it was just referenced by Paul Flaherty, that you had mentioned it, Jeff, there's a little bit of sense of urgency given the sensitivity to the state TIP project, which is probably slated somewhere in 2023 to break ground. And that, you know, you have said that there's going to be 3 months of engineering, 3 months of permitting. So my question to you is is FAFID committed to this project? Does FAFID Development Corporation, do they plan on seeing this project through, or have they had discussions about selling these permits to a future developer?
That's a great question. I mean, typically what it's been doing recently with projects is it goes in, it's trying to get it's getting the permits for the project that it wants to build. It's prepared to build it. But if a buyer comes along and wants to build out the homes, and Fafford is, depending on where Fafford's at, he's sold off other projects to other builders after securing permits. That could happen at any point, I suppose. But he's always prepared to build the project out that he's securing permits for.
Right. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'd be concerned that the town officials rush to meet these time-sensitive deadlines, and to only know that, maybe if they had taken their time, we could have negotiated something that was more in the long-term best interest of the community. So it's just something that I think we all should be mindful of. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Derek, if I can just quick respond to that though. I mean, right now the market for these types of units is strong, right? So Fafford's approach generally on this property and other properties in Massachusetts is it's a good time to get these permits in hand and start getting these things built. And so, if the Board of Selectmen told us tomorrow that it didn't want to work out any sort of cost recoupment or sharing agreement with us, and we should just go ahead with the cross-country route if we can get it approved, Sean would be tasked with engineering that plan, and we'd get into permitting within the next 3 months, and we would chase those permits, and Fafford would be hoping to be building these units later next year. I'm not saying that to put any time pressure on you. I'm just saying that, we've really deferred. We were in the planning board pre-application late 2017 into mid 2019, and since then we kind of stalled. I mean, the planning board was ready for us to get our applications together and submit, and we've stalled everything because we've been wanting to work out the sewer and water infrastructure issues with the town. But for that, we would already have been in permitting, so we're ready to go.
Thank you, Jack.
And is there any, along those lines of having houses in the back and leaving the front vacant for future commercial development or business development? I mean, is that something that Fafford's completely taken off the table? The notion of sort of going, I know it sounds like it's going backwards, right? Is that that ship sailed? Because, I'm just mindful of how that might impact what people's priorities are with regard to water and sewer.
No, I don't think Fafford sort of, committed all or nothing on the townhome style approach there. Fafford thinks it's a good project, a good type of development for that zone, but again, it's not allowed by right. So if we get into permitting with the zoning board and town officials come into that process and say, we think this is a bad idea because it's inconsistent with our long-term plan, blah, blah, et cetera, then the chances of us securing that special permit are reduced significantly. And I would think Fafford's going to be flexible on that. I mean, there are opportunities. It's enough land area that there are opportunities to put some townhomes in there so that you can generate some revenue from that property, and either, build some commercial space out and hope that they're wrong on their marketing analysis, or like you said, just reserve some space for potential future business commercial development. I don't think they're so fixed on anything right now where we haven't even started the permitting process.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I don't want to throw a monkey in the works, but did at least want to test that a little bit. So great. Anything else, Maureen or Steve? No. Okay. Jeff, Sean, thank you very much. This has been super helpful. Clearly there's an interest in us putting that infrastructure along 140. That is clearly preferable, which is why we've gotten to this point. So, we'll take this back. We'll have additional discussions about it with Derek and Dennis, and see what the next steps are.
That's great. Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you both.
Yeah, great. And I think if we could get some paper documents there so that we would have a little more time and a little better opportunity to kind of digest the information. And I think the two key questions, if we can get answers to those in the short run, it'd be nice to not let this topic go cold and we can revisit it quickly. But if we can learn those two answers, again, the breakdown of construction as Selectman Dwinell asked for, and Mr. Westgate asking about the width of that easement. So if we can get those two answers quicker, sooner rather than later, we can revisit it rather quickly, I would hope. So
Right,
thank you.
no problem. No problem.
And I'm sorry to go back. That just jogs a thought too, Steve. And the other thing that we should keep in mind as we think about what the right approach is, and this is more Maureen and Steve for you guys, right? This is probably a $15 to $20 million project for whoever develops this, whoever does this project. So when we're talking about, sharing the cost of a $1.6 million spend, if they're looking at 700,000 of that, and they're talking about a difference in the project of $700,000 on a $15 to $20 million project, we just need to bear in mind that is what it is, right? It's clearly a lot of money, but it's a lot of money relative to $15 or $20 million. So that's something we need to continue to have in our minds.
Right.
Okay. Great. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
So Derek, do we want to hand it over? Is Kenny here on the phone?
Kenny is here. He's just, Kenny, do you have the PowerPoint or do you want me to show it? Okay.
I do have it.
Your volume's a little low, Kenny. I don't know if it's just me. I mean, I think I can hear you okay, but
He's
How
whispering.
about now?
it's okay.
Is that better?
It seems like you're muffled quite a bit. I don't know if you can turn it up or if there's other electronic devices on, but it seems muffled to me.
Okay. Let me try again. I'm just
That's
worried if I
good.
take the earplugs off, you might hear my kids screaming in the background. So,
No, that sounds good. I can hear you well.
okay, thanks. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm here to kick off the fiscal year 22 budget preparation, just an outlook, trends that we've seen from the past. And I figured if Derek wants to jump in, and I'm sure if the board has any questions, and also the FinCom if has any questions, you can jump in. And move to the next slide. Sorry about that. So the first slide we have here shows home values. They've increased 100,000 between 2013 and 2021. As you can see, there's been a steady increase in home values over the last 8 years. That's about that's almost 32%. As I mentioned, $100,000 or $1,828 in annual tax at a rate of $16.60 as the last approved tax rate by DOR. Now, just because the home values have gone up, that doesn't mean that the town has actually brought in more money. I know that's a misconception. A lot of people think that, oh, my home value has increased. That means the town will bring in more money. No, that's a misconception. I've heard Mr. Flaherty, a smart man, also say that as well in the past. And I'll get into the Prop 2.5 and the levy limit later in the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide. This shows the fiscal year 21. You may have recalled this from last year's budget presentation. So as you can see in the pie, the largest out of the $24.6 million budget, the largest by far is education, which is the Mendon Upton Regional School District, and also BVT, which makes up 57% of the total budget. Second is the town services at 31%, the library, police and fire, public safety, services, general government as well. And the last is the fixed cost, which is 12%, and that makes up debt service, pension, insurance for health and building, also payroll taxes, and also state assessments. So that makes up the 12%. Oops, sorry about that. Next slide. This just shows just the various categories. As you can see, education still 57%. Public safety is the second biggest in the pie, 14%, which is police, fire, and EMS. Next is public works and employee benefits, another which is health insurance. And those categories right there is 90% of the total budget. So as you can see, that makes up a large portion of the town's budget, those categories. And going into education, as you can see, there's been a steady increase, an upward trend line in education from fiscal year 12 into 2021. It's varied, anywhere from, a minor decrease of 2%, and this is Mendon Upton Regional School District, to as high as the 16.3%. I recall that was the year of the override of 1.3 million of an override, and BVT is the orange down here, down below. So it looks like it's gone up a few years and it's gone down, and a lot of this drives on student population, student count, and that's something that's reported each year on October 1st. Both Mendon Upton Regional School District and BVT, they need to report their student count each year on October 1st. So those are where the assessments come from. So looking at an average, Mendon Upton Regional School District, average increase is 4.03%, and we would calculate for fiscal year 22, it could be 488,935. BVT would be 175,747 for an increase.
Kenny, Paul Flaherty, could I
Yes.
make a comment? But with respect to both the schools, but even more with regard to Mendon Upton, one of the big drivers there is this thing called minimal local contribution, and that the state is driving more and more to have the municipality pick up the lion's share of the education costs. There are some, I think it's the number, we're somewhere around, I think, high 60s maybe. They have these standards that are set, and that they want you to get to this particular level. And if you don't get to that level, you are penalized 1 or 2%. Okay. Now it's a very complicated process. This school funding, as Kenny knows, but the way this thing is going, the school, we're going to get. The state is forcing the municipalities to pick up more and more of the budget amount. So to think that this is going to the increase is going to go down, I think is foolish, because again, the state is starting to tell you what the town is going to spend. So I know you're aware of that, Kenny, but I'm sure others are too.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's one other interesting point that was just in the newspaper, which is 85 less students in Mendon Upton Regional School District. Now, I know that won't equate to anything. That probably has nothing to do with what their budget will come into. But, unfortunately, that trend continues, which is diminishing population in the district. But again, go ahead, Kenny.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it all depends on the student count and and also like the population. That's a big driver. As well, and as Paul mentioned, there is that minimum required, amount that the town does need to appropriate annually. It goes into the calculation into state aid. So yeah, it's something that the town needs to look closely each year. But as you can see, there's a steady increase or trend increasing from 2012 to 2021. I mean, and at this point, I don't see that. I see that continuing at this point. And there's enough history here that shows that.
Great.
Is everybody all set with the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so this shows the fiscal year 21 budget. I just wanted to show you, since it's such a large number, I just wanted to show you last year and remind you of last year's budget. I mean, there's small salaries, for stipends for the school committee for the regional school district and BVT, and the big number that you'll see down below is the operating expense, for Mendon Upton, which is the 12.2 million. A year ago, from fiscal year 20 to 21, it was a 4.29, increase. The next number is the debt exclusion. That's the debt, for Mendon Upton. It has, as debt is being paid off, it is decreasing. So from 442 to 418, of a decrease of 5.4%. And then there's the BVT on the next slide. As you can see, there's an increase of 9.4% from 1.2 to 1.3. And there's also an assessment also related to debt service, minor amount of 16,000. So for a total, as you can see, last year it was 13,983,944 for a 4.4% increase. And also, if you recall, we did transfer from the rainy day fund, the general stabilization account, 259,000 to add to the budget that you see here, just under 14 million. So just to looking at history and looking at the trend, we're just as an estimate, we estimated 14,582,973. That's an increase just under 600,000 from the fiscal year 21 budget, a 4.29% increase here. So what I've done is I've created an estimated budget, just a pro forma, just so you can see where we're at. I have a slide related to that, so you'll see revenues and you'll see expenditures. So that's why I'm going through some of the bigger budget items, so then you can see the trends, and just obviously at this point we don't know what that number is going to be until we go through the process, but just to kind of give you an idea how we look. And fiscal year 22 at this point, it does look like it will be a challenge, be a very challenging year for the town. The next item is public safety, police, fire, and EMS budget. So as you can see, from fiscal year 2012 to 21, there's been a steady increase, anywhere from just under or 0.32% to as high as 3.6% for the police. Fire, there's been a little bit of higher increase. Actually, it was in fiscal year 18, there was a decrease of just under 3% to as high as 14. But also, again, there's been a steady increase. And then EMS, there's a small budget related to EMS, related to the ambulance, just some EMS supplies. It's about $9,500, not much to that budget. So looking at the trend for fiscal year 22, we're estimating for the police 1,899,000, an increase of 46,347, 2.5% based on the last 5 years. Just looking at that trend. The fire for fiscal year 22, we're looking at 1,346,000, 096, an increase of 69,803, 5.46% based off the last 5-year trend. And we're looking at this point 0% for emergency management. As I mentioned earlier, the budget's $9,500. So looking at these three departments, or two, well, fire EMS now is one department. So looking at these two departments for public safety, we're looking at a budget of about 3.2 million, an increase of 116,000. We're looking at about 3.7% from fiscal year 21. Next slide, fixed costs. So some of our fixed costs that we have is debt service, state and county charges. So as you know, the state gives us money. They, through state aid, they also take money, from the town as well through an assessment. Pension assessment is another large item in this category, and then also payroll taxes. Those are Medicare and also unemployment. So as you can see, we've also had a steady increase in our pension as well. That's the largest number in this category. It was about 10% in fiscal year 20 and also in fiscal year 21. So there's been a steady about 10% in pension. So that's the largest amount. So for fiscal year 22, I did look at the Worcester Regional Retirement System website. I've also looked at PERAC as well to try to see what the fiscal year 22 number is going to be. I believe they're still working on that for that approval, but I'm estimating at this point 703,000 for fiscal year 22. And that'll be an increase of approximately 69,700, about 11% from fiscal year 21. State and county charges, I see a minor increase, maybe $290. Debt service, there is actually going to be a decrease of about $22,000 for fiscal year 21. And the majority of that decrease is due to that recent refunding that we did for the town hall renovation and the water bonds. So the general fund portion, that helped decrease the amount for fiscal year 22. And then payroll taxes, I do see there will be an increase of approximately about 2.6% to about $117,000. So for fiscal year 22.
Kenny?
Yes.
Just going to make a comment with respect to the Worcester County retirement. You got to keep in mind that last year, well, we're in 21 now. So from 20 to 21, there was a 10.8% increase, or like $68,000 or $69,000 year over year there, and now you're anticipating another 11% increase. So these are costs that you can't do anything about, and people just have to understand that. Again, we picked up a couple more retirees in the police department this year. I think I think we had one in the water sewer, or we're gonna have one. And so these are things that they're unavoidable. You just have to live with them, and people have to understand that.
I agree, and I can see. I'm going based off last year. If this number is 15%, that wouldn't surprise me at all. That's the other thing. And right now, the Worcester Regional Retirement System, they're looking now to be fully funded by 2035. So in 15 years, the goal is to be fully funded by then. And that's something that, we'll have to look at closely. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, and, especially investment returns as well. I know when the financial crisis occurred back in 2007, I saw a lot of, communities, especially Massachusetts, all essentially refinancing the mortgage. I know there was a lot of communities that was set to be fully funded by 2028, then they extended out to 2030. And I know then the state provided more relief and you can extend it out to 2040. But right now we're on pace to be fully funded by 2035, which I think would be, would be ideal, would be a great thing. So in 15 years, we would be fully funded on our pension. And essentially, what we're paying each year, we're paying for the past. I mean, we're paying from, the 70s and the 80s, because at that time, communities were not on a funding schedule or a mortgage, just to keep it simple. There was no requirement. There is a requirement now for each city and town to be on a funding schedule and to make that funding amount, each year, or making the more annual mortgage payment each year. So that's something that was not in place in the 70s and 80s. So essentially, a lot of what we're paying now, it is from the past. So the goal would be to be fully funded in 2035. So in 2036, we would have they would call it a pension windfall. And then hopefully at that time in 2036, we could take this funding here, and then we can move this over to OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, which is essentially, it's retiree health insurance. And I do have a slide related to that. The report, we did have a actuarial report done this year that actually was just approved, finalized last week. So I do have a slide, so I'll get into that, in a little bit.
Great.
Just a quick question or comment. When we look at that pension liability and we look at that pension payment and the projection of 703,000, there's got to be more that factors into that. As we look at last year's budget and we say, okay, we added, or I believe we added 2 full-time positions for paramedics and also town planner's position. So as you're adding more and more labor to your workforce, and you're adding hours, intermunicipal agreements, whatever they may be, you've got to be adding to that pension liability. So we say in one breath, in one conversation, we say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. But I would argue there is something you can do about it. You've got to stop hiring. That's really, that's going to be partially mitigate the problem, in my opinion. But again, we'll see how this factors out as we move forward. Just a point I want.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, please do.
Certainly, yeah, certainly.
So as I mentioned, a lot of, the majority of the 703,000 that we're paying, a lot of it is from the past, as I mentioned. I've been to various meetings, various seminars on pension, on retirement, and I've seen various funding schedules. So employees now, I mean, a lot, based off the 9%, and also the 2% on 30+ thousand for earnings. I've seen schedules where current employees, they're not adding to the liability. They're essentially paying for their own pension. So I've seen, like I said, I've seen seminars, I've seen presentations where they do show current employees that they are paying their way. Over the years, there's been also pension reform. So prior to April 1st, 2012, you're paying, or the pension is based off a 3-year highest annual salary, and now it's 5 years. And they've also extended 5 years as far as retirement. So employees with the start date previous to April 1st, 2012, they can retire at 55. Now with the pension reform, now they added 5 years. Now the earliest you can retire is when you're 60. So for new hires that start today, there is some, pension reform, some relief that has come out. So as I mentioned, a lot of this, what we're paying today, a lot of it is from the past.
And Kenny, I would add, you made mention of pension reform, but many of us that are now in the system, who have started working the system in the last 20 years, are paying 11% of our salary goes into the pension. And I do know that there are still a number of individuals that were pre-pension reform and were paying as little as 5%. And then there are some that were what we would consider 7%ers. So as Kenny may mention, that many of the folks that are in the system now are actually almost paying their way, or probably are paying their way. But I think that municipalities are still dealing with those individuals that were only paying 5%, or some others are only paying 7% into their pension.
Yeah, like for example, we do have current employees now that are paying 8%. We did have one employee that was paying 7%, and that employee recently retired in the last couple of years. But we do have, you know, I want to say there's at least 8 employees right now, current employees that we do that are paying 8%.
And the vast majority now, what they call 9+2%.
Yes, and those employees before it's 8% plus the 2. But you know, but right now an employee who would start today would be, as Derek mentioned, would be 11%.
Interesting.
And with respect to the pension reform and moving from 55 to 60, is that only police and fire?
That's all groups. It's all any employee who starts today. That's all groups.
Okay. I thought it was only police and fire that could retire at 55, but that was all groups had that ability?
That's my understanding. I'd have to check that, but that's my understanding. I thought it was.
They do have to have 30 years in order to retire at 55.
And that's group 4. So the group 4 is public safety. Group 1 and 2 are non-public safety, and they have to be at least 62 to retire with 30 plus years in.
Okay.
Thanks, Kenny.
You're welcome. Here's the OPEB slide that I referred to earlier. So OPEB, it's other post-employment benefits. Essentially, that is retiree health insurance. That's what that is. That term. So as I mentioned, we had a full actuarial evaluation just recently performed as of June 30th, 2020 under GASB 7475. That will also be reported in our annual audit, in our annual financial statement as of June 30th. So the liability as of June 30th was reported at $7,848,043. This is an increase of almost 10% of $673,000 from last year, and this is based off 75 members as of June 30th. So as Mr. Flaherty and as we've been talking about, so this number is only going to increase. So as the numbers increase, and then as people are living longer nowadays, so I only see this number as well increasing as well. And this is something that it's done annually, but a full valuation is done every 2 years at this point. And so we do have an OPEB trust fund, and that fund totaled $685,272 as of June 30th, and that represents 8.7% as a funded ratio. So our net OPEB liability, so our liability minus our assets, that's $7,162,771 as of June 30th. And as I mentioned earlier, when we have that pension windfall, perhaps we can divert those funds to our OPEB. So I mean, as you can see, the 8.7%, it's a very low funded ratio. And through the report, they did determine that the amount that we should be contributing is $930,620. As everybody knows, through the budget, the last 5 fiscal years, through a mixture of the operating budget and free cash, we've been contributing $100,000 each year. But I just wanted to let everybody know, the actual report actually indicated that we should be contributing $930,000. So we should be, we'd need to add another 0 in order to meet that requirement. And the other thing I just also wanted to add, it's not a state mandate to fund OPEB at this point. As I mentioned with the pension, yes, is mandatory. It's a mandate from the state to fund pension, but it's not for OPEB. And I also wanted to mention the rating agencies. And just recently we talked to S&P. They found it very favorable that we do have an OPEB trust fund, and we do have a funding plan. So, we're funding 100,000, each year. They looked at to be very favorable. And this is not just, OPEB. It's not a, liability only for the town. I mean, this is a Massachusetts and a nationwide liability that everyone is facing. So, and they know that, the rating agencies, they know that. And when we recently talked to them, I did mention to them that we'll have a pension windfall in 15 years, and we're hopeful in 2036 that we will divert those funds to OPEB, and they found that to be very favorable. Does anybody have any questions related
Can
to
I just
OPEB?
remind folks that new employees contribute 2% into the OPEB trust fund?
That's right. That's correct. So we've also asked through collective bargaining, we've asked our police and fire to contribute to OPEB to help offset the liability, and that's a great thing, and that's really thinking outside the box.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just like to reiterate, right? Like, these are obviously very big numbers in terms of a liability, but the fact that this is a very widely recognized position that folks in various localities are in. So Upton's not unique in this regard. It's something that is, almost universal around the state. So it's not anything from my perspective that we need to be alarmed about or worried about. I think, the fact that the rating agencies look at the plan we've got in place, the funding mechanism that we have in place, as well as the long-term plan that you talked about, Kenny. The fact that they look at that favorably tells us that this isn't something that we need to be concerned about, certainly mindful of, but not concerned about.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's well defined. We discuss it. And again, at least we have a plan moving forward to try to minimize its effects. So, I think that's definitely helpful.
I agree.
Good, thanks.
And this slide here shows you, so this is the largest revenue for the town, which is property tax, which is real estate and personal property. So I wanted to show you fiscal year 20 and 21 and what we're projecting for fiscal year 2022. So it is a calculation. So what they do is they take the prior year levy limit. And by the way, I know I've mentioned this in the past, and I know also Mr. Flaherty as well as mentioned, there is a primer on 2.5. It's about a 19-page document. I would say grab a cup of coffee, because it is a tough read. It's something like myself, I do understand this, but for somebody who first time reviewing this, looking at this, it is something, it's very complicated. A lot of it's very technical to go through. But so the prior year levy limit is your starting point. And then if there's any amended growth through the mid-year, there would be an adjustment. And then here's what everybody talks about, Prop 2.5. So this is the 2.5 automatic increase. This is something that is automatically increased, each year. And then the next category is new growth. So that's the new growth in terms of tax dollars to the town. So as you see, we've had a good for 2020 and 2021. We've had some healthy growth numbers in those 2 fiscal years. And then that total there gives you the new limit. And then there's the debt exclusion. So as you can see, from fiscal year 20 to 21, we had about 400,000 come off from the debt exclusion. A lot of that had to do with Steffen's farm, and then also the fire station as well. It was a capital project. And then there's the maximum allowable levy, and then there's the actual tax levy. So as you know, the budget, it's 24.6 million. We're bringing in 21.8. for fiscal 21 in tax revenue. So to show you 2022, so the new limit here, as you see, 21,315,000, that shifts to the top, and then it's just going through the formula, which the 2.5 automatic increase, new growth. We estimated 250 a year ago, so I just put 250 in there. That's something that the Board of Assessors will have to review, and this is something that you always want to be conservative. For example, let's just say we decide, or the Board of Assessors, or we decide that we wanted to go with $500,000 for the budget. The issue is, we need to see that there are projects, there's some big ticket items in the works in order to say, we want to budget 500,000, because if that number ends up being 250, that's approved by BLA, by the DOR, the Bureau of Local Assessing, then we'll have a $250,000 shortfall in our budget, which you don't want to be in that situation. So you definitely want to budget, you want to budget conservatively for new growth, because you don't want to end up short later in the fiscal year. And that's just a good practice. And that's something that actually the rating agency did ask us about, as far as how we budget and how we budget for new growth. And we let them know that we budget conservative, and same thing for local receipts. We're very conservative in nature. So they were very happy to hear that, and they're looking for the town to continue to do that, to continue that trend. Does anybody have any questions related to the tax levy?
I don't know. It looks good.
Sorry. So here I just created a projected fiscal year 22 budget summary. I apologize for all the numbers, and I'm not sure if everybody can see this clearly on your screen. But just to do a comparative between fiscal year 21 and 22. So the net in revenues from one year to the next, we're looking at 696,903. And on the expense side, we're looking at 941,000 for an increase that we're projecting. So I'm just going to dive a little bit into the numbers so you can see what I'm looking at for trends. So as we mentioned, for property tax, we're looking at, with the net debt exclusion and the debt exclusion amount, we're looking at about 960,000 of an increase. We also looked at overlay, and we did see there was an uptick in fiscal year 24 abatements. So we actually did increase in fiscal year 21 to 170,000 as part of the recap. We did that, so we're also looking to see to continue to do that in fiscal year 22. So that would be a decrease or of 20, and actually this would be an increase of 20,000 to the budget. We're also projecting a 10% decline on state aid. We're looking at fiscal year 22 to be a very difficult year for the state. Because actually in fiscal year 21, the state has not approved their budget yet. So they do not have a budget at this point. So I'm hearing, my understanding that fiscal year 22 will be a difficult year. The only, perhaps there could be some stimulus money to maybe help offset that. But at this point, I think it would be prudent. It would be good for the town to be conservative and to estimate perhaps a 10% cut in state aid. So that would be, on the education side, that would be 3,980. On the municipal side, it would be a decrease of 78,922. The reason why there's a slight difference is related to the veterans benefits. Generally, they don't cut veterans benefits. That's very formula driven, so that's why it's just under the 10%. And the next item was motor vehicle excise. We are seeing an increase in motor vehicle excise the last few years, so we're looking to increase that to maybe help offset some of the other decreases in estimated revenue. So we're looking to increase that by 112,000 at this point. So penalties and interest on taxes and excise. So on real estate, motor vehicle excise, tax title, these are penalties and interest that the town collects throughout the year. We did see a decrease in fiscal year 20, and we think some of it may be attributable to in the last quarter, we did help out taxpayers by extending out the due date. So we think that might have attributed to that, but we did collect, we did see a decrease in revenue, approximately $30,000 in fiscal year 20. So we thought it would be prudent to also decrease that revenue amount as well. Small increase in pilot payments. That's a payment that we received from the federal government. Fees, we're seeing a slight increase at $7,650. Other departmental revenue, we're seeing a decrease of $5,000, and some of it a lot has to do with the ambulance. We did see a decrease in ambulance revenue in fiscal year 20. We seem to think maybe that is COVID related. I think a lot of people decided not to take the ambulance, or maybe not. Just we saw a decrease in revenue in run activity. We did confirm that with the fire chief, so we're looking to decrease that by $5,000. License and permits, we're looking to increase that by $15,000. That a lot has to do with the building permits. We've seen a steady increase over the last 5 years in building permits, so we're looking to increase that by $15,000. Court fines and investment income, we're seeing that to be flat. And this other item, other available funds, the $259,000, that is the transfer from the general stabilization fund into the general fund for the increased assessment for the Upton Regional School District and the BVT. So that's the $259 that you see there. As you know, general stabilization, it's one-time revenue. And then on the expense side, so what I did was I went through each department, and for wages, I put in a 1.5% increase in wages for each department. And then, I also looked at education, as I mentioned, the $599,000 increase that you see there. I also plugged in the public safety amount as well, as you see the 3.83% there. And as you can see, the other categories like general government, public works, health and human services, which would be your council on aging, and veterans, culture and rec, which would be your library. There's modest increases there. Sorry about that. Debt service, we're looking at a decrease of $22,000, as I mentioned earlier. State and county assessments, an increase of $290. Employee benefits and other, we're looking at an increase approximately of $144,561. And again, that has a lot to do with insurance, health insurance, and those types of expenses. So looking at fiscal year 22, just doing a pro forma, just doing a quick estimate of the fiscal year 22 budget, I'm seeing that there's an unfavorable variance right at this point of $244,925. And as I mentioned, this is really early in the process, but I just wanted to give you a 10,000 foot level of the budget and what I'm looking at trends, where I'm seeing revenues, where I'm seeing expenses going. So I do see fiscal year 22 being a very difficult year, as you can see.
Yeah. Just one quick question, Kenny, and or observation, but really a question. I know, Steve, to your point about, as we hire new people, we incur some of these longer term expenses. It sounds like some of the retirement and pension is covered by the new arrangements that we have with folks. But I'm wondering if this employee benefits and other line item that went up by $144,000, is that a a category that does increase sort of in the near term versus some of those pension liabilities as we hire new people?
So this does include employee benefits, and as I mentioned, I do see this increasing, year to year, and it has. There's a lot of factors. I mean, when they go through the determining what that amount is, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the market, as well, and it also doesn't, look at, how many, as you mentioned, how many employees we do have. But as I mentioned, this has a lot to do with the past, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, go ahead. I know Maureen and Derek are trying to get in here. Go ahead, Maureen.
Kenny, I just have one question on the revenue that comes in from the taxes collected at time of occupancy. In which category is that in?
That's actually, we put that into the property taxes revenue. So it's actually, it would be part of the 22,000, or sorry, the 22 million. But we put that into that category. We're not budgeting it at this point, because
Okay.
each year it's unknown. So I would say when that revenue comes in at the end of the year, it'd be part of free cash. And if I recall, it last year we collected, it was about 55,000, if I recall.
I think, yeah, 55 or 59,000, I forget.
Yes, it's about that. And I checked with our outside auditors if it's okay for us to credit that 55,000 against the property taxes.
Okay.
And they
So you
were
added
fine with that.
You added that to the levy?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So I know a couple of people are waiting here to jump in. Derek, why don't you go ahead, and then Mr. Flaherty will hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before we jump into questions, I just kind of wanted to circle everybody back. This was, we haven't done this, at least since I have been here, conducted a pre-budget discussion. But I know this was something that the board had urged both myself and Kenny to put together so that we can start to think about what FY22 is going to look like. And so I had issued the budget guidance a couple of weeks back to all of our departments. That was then subsequently forwarded by the Finance Committee to the elected boards and committees to start to develop their budgets. And so, as you can see here, just based upon budget assumptions, both in what we're projecting revenue is going to be and trends in previous expenses, you can see that we're running almost $250,000 in the red. So those are based upon trends. The conversations we're having with the departments right now is certainly to buck those trends and to develop budgets that are based upon absolute needs within each one of our service delivery components, and then our expectation when we deliver our budget recommendation on January 19th is to submit to the Board of Selectmen a balanced budget. So we're seeing a projected $250,000 budget deficit right now, but the expectation is in January is that that'll go away, and we will then deliver with cuts a budget that is balanced. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. All right, Paul.
I just had a quick question for Derek. I don't know if we could fire that off.
Go ahead. I'll yield that, Brett, at this point.
Okay, thanks. Derek, have we had any dialogue back and forth with either one of the regional school districts? That always seems to be, a linchpin to the budget, where we think we have things under control, and then we kind of get something dropped in our lap at the 9th hour, so to say. Is there any inclination at this point in time, what either budget is going to look like from the perspective of an increased level funding, or whatever they may be
Sure.
thinking?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's certainly, as you know, that's going to be the major budget driver, because those two budgets are beyond our control. I can tell you that I've reached out to both school superintendents. I have heard back from Mendon Upton, and they are actually receiving their department budget submittals as we speak. And they're going to pour through those submittals, as we will, over the course of the next couple of weeks. And I was told that in early January, Mendon Upton will give us a preliminary budget number. I have not heard from BBT as of this date, but I'm hoping that we can avoid what happened last year and not receive these budget numbers later in the budget process. So, but I will certainly keep everybody posted as it's coming.
Thanks.
I have a question for Kenny to the chair.
Oh, hang on one sec, Sean. I think Mr. Flaherty's been waiting.
All right.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Derek had said here, you got to keep in mind that with respect to the amount of money that our levy limit and what we're going to raise here, we're starting off with $256,000 in the hole this year because we took that money from stabilization. It was the easiest thing to do, but we took a one-time receipt or a one-time revenue to fund an ongoing expense. So we knew it was going to come back and bite us, but it was a lot easier to do than trying to put forward an override. So that's something that's out there to be considered too. And I think there's an elephant in the room that hasn't been mentioned earlier tonight, and that's waste removal. All right. We had a meeting with the Finance Committee, the Board of Health, and the Board of Selectmen. I think it was September 5th or 6th, somewhere in there. And we had a discussion as to try to explore ways or options to how we're going to handle the waste removal. In fiscal 19, we spent $395,000. In fiscal 20, we spent $522,000. In fiscal 21, we're spending $565. Quickly to do the math, in the 3-year increase, it's $175,000 that waste removal budget has increased. Now, I mentioned something to Diane at the Board of Health, and I'm not throwing her under the bus, but nothing has been done about anybody making, again, it's the Board of Health's issue, but nothing's been done about exploring options with this, with the trash removal issue. So you had a $43,000 increase between 20 and 21, which is now. So you figure, I don't know what Kenny figured in there, if he figured anything, but you're probably going to look at another $40,000 or $50,000 increase in the waste removal there. And nobody seems to give a damn about it. That's my comment at that point. So.
Go ahead, Sean.
So it's a couple of things. One item that continues to be in my mind with Mendon Upton Regional School Board is, early this year when we were looking at FY 21, back before COVID had hit, they were looking at potentially looking for monies that would cause an override. In fact, at that time, they were looking for about $2.3 million above what was roughly within the levy limit for Mendon Upton. We would have been looking about 1.2, I think, an override at the time. Is there any indication as to whether or not they're trying to continue moving with their strategic plan at this point and looking to bring that this year, or whether or not they're going to perhaps try to just maintain level services at this time? Derek?
Derek, do you mind just repeating what you had said about the schools?
Sure. So as I had mentioned earlier, I've reached out to both the school superintendents, and Mendon Upton is the school that has the only one that's responded, and they're pouring through their department submittals right now, and they intend on giving us a budget submittal in early January so that we can submit it as part of the overall town manager's recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee They haven't given any indication of what they're expecting for increases, but I would expect that there'd be increases on par with the past previous 2 years.
Okay, so we don't know whether or not they're going to come back potentially with the original proposal that they had this last year, which was to go for an override.
For an override, they haven't used that word, but they haven't ruled it out either. I would say that it wouldn't appear that an override will take place this year. But again, that's just my opinion by trying to read the tea leaves, but they haven't made an indication either way.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I understand it, they will start having the budget subcommittee meetings within the very first part of January. I heard that at the last school committee meeting. So again, it's a slow process. So I don't know, Sean and we had talked earlier. I went to these meetings last year, and because Sean was not able to do it, so he's volunteered to do it again. And if it'll be easier now, because I guess all these meetings are now going to be virtual. So
Thanks for stepping up to do that, Sean.
Thank you. Just a question also for Kenny, if I may. Really just a point of clarification. I'm sure I've asked before, gotten an answer and just forgotten. In looking at the revenues, property taxes, debt exclusion, and then looking down at the estimated expenses for debt service, I was just curious if you could help me understand the difference of why what appears to be we're pulling in more revenues for a debt exclusion than what the actual debt service, but what is needed to pay the debt service.
So if I may, the difference is the school assessment. So the 557 and the 526 includes the school assessment related to debt. So when you go into the school budget, the school assessment, that will get you there.
All right, thank you.
And the debt service that you see there, that's not 100%. There's a portion there that is under the levy. So it's not all exempt debt. So it's not a one-to-one ratio.
All right, thank you.
If that helps.
Great. And I would just remind everybody that FinCom's in open session. So any folks have questions or comments, certainly this is a good time for it. I know to Derek's point, this is something that we haven't done in the past. It's just another representation of creating engagement and transparency and conversation as early as possible in all of these processes in terms of the annual process and, putting together a timeline, a schedule, publishing these types of draft budgets, putting the warrant in the warrant articles in the newspapers, distributing those. So there's a lot that's going on very intentionally to increase transparency and engagement around the annual operations of the town. So again, kudos to Derek and Kenny for pulling this together. But obviously, if there are other questions, we don't need to stop.
Getting back to the numbers for just a minute. Kenny, as we look over a third line down, overlay, you said that we expended a little bit more out of that account than you have seen in the past couple of years. If we look back at that, let's just say the last 2 or 3 years, that 150,000, did we expend all of that for FY21? Well, we don't know that just yet. But what did FY20 and 19 look like? Again, how close to that 150 are we expending?
So overlay, the states actually changed how overlay is viewed. Overlay now is one single account for all real estate and personal property. And just for memory from the last recap from fiscal year 21, so all the receivables for real estate and personal property that could be subject to abatements. So we do have enough overlay to cover all of it. So at this point. So as I mentioned, I did see an uptick in fiscal year 20 for overlay. So it's just something that we did increase to 170. I also did notice an increase in personal property. This year we went from 2.5 to 3% on our recent recap. So I'm also concerned that some of the utility companies may put in some abatements. So I just want to make sure we get that covered, so there's no surprises. So, but I did see on the last recap, we have all our receivables covered, and that's something that DOR looks at. So again, overlay is one single account now. It's not by fiscal year.
Right, but it basically gets taxed each year, right? That amount would would be increasing from $150,000 tax to $170,000 tax.
So the 150, the 170, it represents refunds. So essentially, somebody would apply for a real estate tax abatement. So we just want to make sure we have enough reserves. We want to make sure we have enough money set aside to fund or release those refunds. So again, it's overlay. We do track it each year. However, like I said, DOR, they do look at it as one account, total overall, and we want to make sure that we have enough to cover all our real estate receivables and personal property out there. But it's something that it's really an offset. So that's something that we do want to we want to make sure we do have enough set aside for those refunds.
And then just another point, wanted to just address real quick. Paul, you brought up a good point regarding trash, how that continues to grow each year. And I think this is going to be one of those years I feel that we're going to have to make decisions. And I think that some cuts are going to have to be made. And perhaps trash is one of them, that we're going to have to make a recommendation and decide. But it doesn't look like we're going to be able to afford everything. So things are going to need to be cut. When we have that conversation, I suppose sooner rather than later.
Steve, your problem there is that you have a contract, and there's statutory requirements that involve giving notice that you want to break the contract and all that. So it's not just going to say, we can't say we're not going to pay it. This has to be worked out somewhere along the line. But from what I can gather, there's not a whole lot of interest anywhere to doing anything about changing the way we do trash.
That contract is a 1 year rolling contract.
I believe it's a year-to-year contract on the trash removal itself. It's the tipping fees that we would still be liable for and some of the other fees associated with it. But again, we're going to have a line in the sand where we're going to have to, decide that. And we're assuming it's going to go up this year, but we don't know what that number is going to look like. Maybe it will be level funded. We don't know that just yet.
Yeah, and I know from the meeting that we had with the Board of Health in September, right, that we talked about all these things and the different options, and it seemed, to your point, Paul, that there was very little appetite to change the model. And at least what I heard from most of the people there was that there was a sense that folks in town the majority of folks in town would be surprised if we changed that model. So certainly that's something that we should continue to talk about. And maybe we bring something with, or the Board of Health is planning to bring something to town meeting in the spring. We'll have to see what that is, but at least based on the conversation we were all a part of in September, it didn't seem like there was much support behind trying to, make significant changes to the way trash and recycling is handled in the town. But that was just what I recall.
I recall the same thing, so.
Yeah. So Steve, I noticed you came on video. Go ahead. I assume you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments and then a couple of questions. First, I think this is really good information to be sharing at this point. light years ahead of what I remember as being part of FinCom. This is usually a scramble period for Paul and myself to gather information. So this is great. Kudos to Kenny and to Derek. I have two questions. They both have to do with revenues. The first one is payment in lieu of taxes. I know that we have a couple of solar projects in town. Are they paying a pilot, or are they just paying taxes based on the actual equipment that's on site? Does anyone know?
It's actually both. We have a pilot agreement for the solar panel that's on, that was trust property. And the other ones, we are taxing them as real estate property.
So it's on something other than the pilot line? I guess my question, because it's only.
It's all going into property taxes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Kelly,
And then,
Kenny, that line we see there on pilot, that's the line that shows up on the cherry sheet. That's to get the payment that the state gives you for the state land in the town. Am I correct?
No, that's actually from the feds. That's from the Department of Interior.
All right. Well, there's
So
a line that shows up on the cherry sheet for pilot, which is a payment for state land.
No, that's right, and that would be up here. That would be the state aid municipal.
Right. Okay.
That's correct. Yep, that would be under the state aid municipal right here. That would be part of the 726.
Right.
State-owned
Okay.
land, correct.
And I think that did increase this year from 185,000 to 204,000, if I remember correctly. That may be where the confusion lies.
So the state-owned land, that would be part of the 726,289. Again, the pilot payment here, the $224, that is a federal payment. That's a check that we received from the federal government. I believe there's some federal, there's some land in town that's federally owned, and that's their payment. It's such a minor, a small amount. But no, the cherry sheet amount is part of the 726. And you're right. I believe it's about, I think it's about 24,000 in fiscal year 21.
Go ahead, Mr. Byrne.
yeah, okay. The second question I had, and I promise I'm not obsessed with the railroad, but with their expansion that's going on over there, are we going to see an increase in property taxes because of the multi-million-dollar expansion, or are they exempt from that stuff?
They are not exempt. We are expecting substantial increases in taxes as based upon their projection numbers. So it could be anywhere, I would say conservatively $70,000 upwards of $100,000.
Yeah, I was just curious. Yep. That's all for me, Brett. Thank you.
Of course, great. Other questions, feedback? Amen.
Can I just make out one point? It was alluded earlier that the values of the prices the houses are going for, and my good friend Madam Assessor, if I get some little commentary from her, I have seen these sheets that reflecting the real estate transfers in the town for the past 2 or 3 months. And there are several pieces of property, and I got them from Kelly, so these houses are selling for somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000 more than the assessed values. So that, I don't know where people are coming up with the money, but we're doing something right that people want to come here. So Kelly, why don't you?
Well, a caveat to that is the last couple of reports I've given you have not reflected actual market or actual assessed values because they haven't been updated yet. So but there was one report that every sale that was made was more than $100,000 more than assessed values. So I think we're going to be seeing that market trends. Anything that I see on a national level is saying people are, because of the pandemic and working from home and what companies are doing. People are moving out and getting more space, and Upton and not having to deal with, I don't know what just happened there, and not having to deal with, hold on. Sorry about that. And not having to deal with a commute, that I think Upton is a very attractive place for market values. So to
Okay.
Paul's point, houses are being sold for more than people are paying the money to move to Upton. Let's put it that way.
Great. Well, thanks, Kenny. Definitely appreciate the presentation and all the work that goes into these things. And, this is a great new addition to our annual routine. So thank you.
Actually, Brett, I have a few more slides,
Oh, sorry.
if I may. Sorry.
No, please. I thought that was the grand finale.
No, there's more. Oop. So I also wanted to show you, so once, and as I mentioned, these projected amounts, these trends, this is just based off previous years where I'm seeing expenditures. So I just also wanted to see what it looked like in the pie charts. And because it's a trend, there's actually no change. So as you can see, education still 57%, town services 31, fixed costs is 12, and that would be based off a $25.6 million budget. Same thing with the budget by the pie chart by function. Same thing, no change at all. And I also wanted to share with you financial indicators that in the town, we've had a successful budget building process in 21, even during the pandemic. We've budgeted conservatively for revenues and expenses, which has served the town well to weather this storm. I mean, it's a kudos to the town that we budgeted conservatively, because if not, I think we would be looking at major cuts in 22 if we haven't been conservative in the past. Free cash, let everybody know, and actually fiscal year 20 doesn't seem that it feels like I just closed the books yesterday. Free cash was certified at 2.1 million. Also, as everybody knows, the town recently refunded bonds of 5.5 million. So we're going to realize savings of 548,000 over the next 14 years. Also, the town, we were able to secure, we talked to S&P, we had a rating, and we had a AA+ stable rating, which is second best to a AAA. So I believe that the town, we need to stay on course. We need to keep doing the good things, the great things that we're doing, because I do see in the future that we will be in strong consideration for a AAA bond rating, and I think that would, to me, that would be a great thing, a great achievement for the town. So that's something to keep in mind. The current rainy day stabilization account balance is $2,029,183, and the S&P rating agency, they will review the town's general stabilization rainy day fund, and they will calculate the 10%, because they did do that based on our previous balance from fiscal year 20, and they did see that we were just short. So I would recommend that we would need to look at that again in fiscal year 21 and look to see if we can add to it so we can get to the 10%. And we've appropriated 500,000 annually the last 2 fiscal years, and Moody's found that to be very favorable. That we were looking to add to our reserves. So that's something that we need to consider in fiscal year 21 and forward, because they are looking for that 10% benchmark.
And I would just add here, Kenny, like this is clearly a great overview of all the great work and progress that's gone into the town's financial policy and planning. And sometimes some of these things can be fairly abstract when you talk about bond ratings with people, but this is a perfect example to have the information on one slide where we're talking about having a AA+ bond rating. And the reason that's important is because when you refinance or borrow money, that rating is what's used to calculate your interest rate. So in this case, because of our AAA or our AA+ bond rating, we were able to save $548,000 taxpayer money. And that's partly because of the discipline around creating a stabilization fund, having strong free cash. So that's one critical point and observation I'd make on this slide. And the other one is that oftentimes, and I've heard it said in the past here, people say, you know, why are we saving this rainy day fund? You know, we never seem to spend it, we just seem to save it. But you look at what we did last year as a perfect example of, you know what, it was a tough year because of what was happening with the schools. And we ended up being able to fund that deficit with free cash and with stabilization money. So that's an example of how you use these tools to, you know, modulate the experience and impact that financial markets have on taxpayers. So I just wanted to take a pause and reinforce that this is a lot of great work. It's important work. Sometimes it gets a little bit technical. Sometimes it can seem frustrating when people see us putting money away, but it all ends up helping in various circumstances, and we've seen some of those pan out over the past year, and so it's been good that we're in this position, and it's a good time to illustrate that. So thanks, Ken.
Thank you. I'm almost done.
All good.
Sorry, whoa. Here we go. So fiscal year 2 budget, it's going to be challenging, and we all need to work together. All stakeholders need to work together so we can produce a balanced budget. But the budget guidance has been sent out by Derek to all department heads, boards, and commissions. And we've also created the budget in our financial system for budget entry. And as I believe Steve and everybody's mentioned today, Derek's mentioned today, I mean, this is the first time that we've done this. At least I know in the last seven years I've been with the town. So I hope everybody found this to be beneficial. I think this is a great tool, great plan, like a great kickoff to fiscal year 22, the budget process. So I hope everybody found this to be beneficial. And I know there's a lot of information here, but I think this is just a good overview of the budget.
I think it's a great thing that you and Derek and your financial team have done, and it's very informational. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen.
I look at this as being, one of the benefits of having this new financial department in place. And to your point, this is the first time we've done anything like this. So it gives everybody an idea of just where we are and where these challenges are going to be. And there's going to be a lot of them. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Kenny. Appreciate all the time and effort and work as always.
Thank you.
Brett, can I take a minute here, a second?
Please, yes.
Does anybody from the Finance Committee have any other questions or anything they want to add to this discussion? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn at 9:25.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Sean? Second?
Second.
Steve Byrne? Roll call. Steve Byrne,
Aye.
Sean Craig,
Here.
aye.
Aye.
Rick McGuire,
Aye.
Paul Flaherty, aye. Motion adjourned. Finance Committee is adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
You bet. Nice to see everyone. Okay, so motion to renew annual licensing. The first one here is BVT's Common Victular. Do we have any questions about this? If not, I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve the common victual license for BVT. Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Second the motion, Stephen Metellian, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. Next up, we have a Class 2 for Lakeside Machine.
I
I
move
need
that
to
we.
recuse myself for this particular item. I need to recuse myself. Thank you.
Thanks.
I move that we approve the Class 2 license for Lakeside Machine. Maureen Dronell, aye.
I second the motion and approve. Brett Simus, aye. Majority action. Come back, Steve. Hey.
Oh, we're just getting to the exciting part of the meeting, Brett. How long could I stay away?
Next up, Technology Committee member. It looks like we've got John Bouthiet. I don't know if John is here, but it looks like he has been in town a long time, and has served on this committee in the past. So I don't have any questions. Maureen, Steve?
No, I'm on.
Yeah, I was gonna say if he happens to be on the meeting, it'd be nice to have him at least introduce himself, but if he's not, I have no problem making the appointment. So I'll make a motion to appoint John Bouthiet to the Technology Committee. Stephen Mattelli and I.
Second, Maureen Dronell, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. And next up, we have approving a donation of $100 from Senator Michael Moore to the Council on Aging for the to-go Christmas dinner.
I make a motion that we accept the donation of $100 from Senator Michael Moore for the to-go Christmas dinner for the Council on the Aging. Maureen Dronell, aye.
Second the motion, Stephen Mattelli and I.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. And next up, we have updates to the Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual. Sandy, do you want to walk us through these, or Derek?
Certainly. Recently, I brought these before the Personnel Board, and they were unanimously approved, the updates. And as you know, we, a few years back, had changed their process. So now they come before you to review that, and once approved, they would be incorporated into the Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual. The first one is vacation credits. This is basically just another strategy to attract and retain talented employees. It would read, new employees with previous specific and relevant department experience may receive vacation credits determined upon their years of experience and upon the recommendation of the hiring authority and human resources with final approval by the town manager. The second update would be long-term sick pay. And basically this is just explaining a benefit that is already been in place for several years, but it just puts it in writing. It has been a practice for at least 6 or 7 years. And it just explains the process for short-term disability. The third request or update would be a definition adding into the leave of absence. And this is consistent language that is found in the CBAs. So again, it's just mirroring something that's already in the CBAs, but it would go into the Policy and Procedure Manual. If the employee fails to return to full duty after the leave expires, it shall be considered a voluntary resignation effective the last day of the unpaid leave.
Great. Looks good to me. Any questions, Steve or Maureen? If not, I'll take a motion.
I did have a quick question. A couple of quick questions. The 12-week period in duration, it just would appear to be an awful long time as far as a leave of absence. How did that read prior to this amendment? What would have been a normal, the longest period of time someone could have taken a leave of absence?
It's there's no change in that. The only thing that's being changed in the leave of absence language policy is the last sentence, which is underlined. And basically that just gives us an end date. So everything else is the same that's presently there. The only thing that's being changed is the last sentence added.
So the 12 weeks is staying the same.
Yes, everything's staying the same except what's underlined.
Now,
is being added.
and Sandy, is this different from the Family Leave Act?
Yes, this is not the FMLA. This is just a leave of absence for other reasons.
Okay.
And the only other question I had was if you could just explain a little bit how the vacation credits work, where typically speaking on a new hire, what do we offer and what would this allow us to go to?
What we offer now is 1 week's vacation can be taken after 1 year of service. It's accrued on a monthly basis. An employee is not eligible to take any vacation time during their probationary period, which is 6 months. But after 1 year, they've earned 1 week's vacation. And if we're, to give an example, if we were to hire a professional specialty person, employee, and they have 10 years experience in their previous position, we would want to probably offer them more than the 1 week to be competitive with what they already have. So it would still stay on our schedule, but they would just be starting with more.
So
And
if
keep in mind,
they're,
this is for non-reps. This is for non-union. This procedure is for non-union employees. All our union employees have separate collective bargaining agreements in which they have to abide by.
And
so
also
when-
to note that in the collective bargaining agreements, and some of them, it does allow, for instance, in the police CBA, Derek, I believe, is that we can bring an experienced police officer on with additional vacation credits.
so Sandy, if we hire a professional, do we hire most of our professionals under contract?
No,
We
not
put a-
always.
Not always?
We just hired a professional person and they're not under contract, no. Not all exempt employees are contracted.
So, okay, so they would receive credit on, okay, determined on their experience.
Right.
So
and
if I
it
could
would
just use a good example, if I may. So we'll say our building commissioner were to retire and we wanted to replace him with a building commissioner with 10 years experience with all the state certifications. It's challenging to offer a position to an individual with that background qualifications and tell them that they have to give up 4 weeks vacation at their existing community to come here and start all over 1 week. So this language gives us the ability to be able to negotiate vacation time based upon that person's previous service.
Understandable.
I see that. I just, from my thinking is, wouldn't we want to have some sort of a cap on that? In other words, I wouldn't see taking in a new hire and offering 1 month's vacation would seem excessive to me, but you don't think that should have a cap, not to exceed a certain amount of days?
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's about offering people too much vacation, right? It's about trying to offer them enough. It's not like someone's going to come in and we're going to say, hey, you're going to get, 8 weeks of vacation. It's just to bring them to parity for their experience level. It seems like it's a pretty common thing.
We also, what do we top out at? 5 weeks?
Yes.
So they still have, I mean, in order to get experienced workers and be vetted out by the proper people, I think that's what you have to offer them.
I mean, if Steve, would it make you more comfortable if there was wording in there that said not to exceed the maximum allowed vacation time for a given role or something like that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't want to have it open-ended, that's all. I mean, it just would seem, It just seems, again, it's open-ended, so I don't know, whatever. I mean, we don't want it to have to vary each year. We don't want to be amending this every year, but we should, in my opinion, we should have some sort of a cap on the amount of time that you can offer.
We also have a cap on the amount of time right now. It's only 5 weeks that are allowed tops. That's it for anybody.
That's my thinking. I mean, I don't,
Right.
the other control we have is Sandy and Derek.
That's right.
Trusting them to do the right thing.
You gotta figure, they gotta go through the personnel committee too, and Derek and Sandy and all of them. I don't have any problem with this.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. If you don't have a problem, then I guess we'll have to go with that. Yeah,
Okay, so.
like I say, yep, good.
I will make a motion that we approve the updates on the personnel committee handbook regarding vacation credits, long-term sick pay, and leave of absence. Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Stephen Mattellion, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. Next up, we have the snow plowing on private ways. It's something that we look at every year. Do folks have any questions on this or want to discuss any of the recommendations here? Dennis, I don't know if Dennis is still here. Oh, there you are. Yeah, if you want to make any comments on this before we approve it.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So it's the same roads that we approved last year with one exception. As this board recalls, I'm sure we ran into a hiccup last year. We were paving on Russell, and we realized that the middle section of Russell is not laid out and connected. So just to make it legal, I added that to the list of streets for the board to consider that you normally vote on, so that we're legal when we plow that road.
Yeah.
Otherwise than that, it's the exact same roads we did last year. We advertised it in the middle of the summer. Sandy put it in the paper. And there was one road, I think it was Shore Drive, that had some brushback requirements and some potholes. And like we do every year, Mr. Chairman, we're in communication with those residents out there. One year it was Breton Road, and we were in communication. We always communicate with our residents and let them know that, hey, your road's got some issues. We want to make sure you get it done so we can plow it and help them stay on the straight and the narrow. And they completed it in time. And we've already had 2 snowstorms, plowable snowstorms, as you know, and we've done all the roads.
Yeah, awesome, good.
Okay,
I'll take a
and we're
motion.
talking about the roads in the chart that we see here, the ones that are in yellow are the roads in question, correct?
Yes, Steve, all the ones in yellow.
Yep, I have no other questions.
Me either.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I
Make a
move.
motion. Oh,
Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Make a motion to execute the agreement to plowing of the private ways, which would be Boothia Lane, Breton Road, Depot Street, Old State Road, Shore Drive, Wagon Wheel or Sheffield Road, and the middle section of Russell Avenue. Stephen
Second.
Mattellion, aye.
Second, Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Unanimous action. Thanks for pulling this together, Dennis.
Thank you.
Next up, the review and approve use of the town hall policy. I know that
I don't have that.
I think it was sent out.
It was, but I can't, oh, I know, I'll have to go to my email. Oh, let's see.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, all right.
So why don't you guys have Derek, scroll through to anywhere, or yeah, scroll through to show us where the changes are. And I think that I looked at it and it looked like everything that we talked about had been addressed, but let's make sure we're clear.
Sure. So we think we captured everything in this paragraph 2 here. We removed everything except it's now reads permits for commercial activity and political campaign fundraising will not be authorized. So, private use and nonprofit use, parties, recitals are now authorized, which again was a contradiction to our fee structure, which allowed for private parties.
Wouldn't we want the word political still in there?
Well, it is, and political campaign fundraising.
Right, but isn't that red? Would that be striked out?
No,
Or is
that's added. That's an add-on. So anything that's stricken will have the line through it. See,
Okay.
anything that's new, that's newly added, will have an underline underneath it. Paragraph 5 here, based upon what we heard the majority of the board talk about, was to prohibit alcohol use on property. So we've stricken that in number 5.
Okay.
This is just, some of this stuff is more administrative than anything else. All events must be concluded by 11 on Friday, Saturday at 9, on Sunday, unless authorized by the town manager. This was a paragraph that prohibited food consumption, so we've removed that from this paragraph. Again, more administrative cleanup, just removing the old town manager's email address and not having any email address of that at all. Same here. Although we didn't talk about this, when I was going through it, I noted this. I think like fees can change, so can our insurance requirements. So I just inserted in accordance with the most current insurance requirements. And our insurance provider, Maya, sets those insurance requirements. So versus keeping this 1,000 per occurrence to 2 million per aggregate, I thought it would be best that we strike all that and insert the above language. If you disagree, I can make the changes back to how it was.
What is the most current with Maya right now?
Off the top of my head, what is written with the 1 million per occurrence and 2 million per aggregate is, I believe that's Maya's current requirement.
Okay.
So again, we can keep that in there if we choose to, or we can just keep it general so that however Maya determines it, we can just make that change without having to make a formal change at a board of selectmen.
Right.
It's up to you all.
I like seeing it in there myself. I mean, I would like to see those numbers left in there, but what are your thoughts, Maureen? Or Brett?
Well,
I just think the concern is if the numbers change, right? We don't want to have to go back and update this policy if the numbers change.
right. If Maya recommends something higher, then we'd have to go back in and change it. If they recommend something lower, we'd have to go back in and change it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see it changing every 5 years, right?
Who knows? I would go with the recommendation of the insurance company myself.
Which is the 1 million, 2 million, or no, nothing at all, you mean?
No, it's 1 million, 2 million right now, but that can go up. When things, as time goes on, it could go up to 2 million, 3 million, or 4 million, 5 million, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
At least we'd be covered under that one in accordance with the most current insurance requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Doubt if it'll go down.
No, it will definitely not go down.
No. Never goes down, Derek.
Everything else. So I'll leave that up for you to decide. I'll keep scrolling through. Here's all the reference to the service of alcohol. Those have all been stricken. This speaks to parking is limited to 14 spaces on Warren Street as well as 2 handicap spaces. I again have stricken that given the fact that that may change, and quite frankly, I don't see any rationale with having to have the number of spaces at the parking lot. And including that, we included in the municipal lots on Grove Street, which would be 0 Grove, which is what we just acquired, and the lot next door to it. Sandy, help me out with this one because we had this conversation. And I think, Maureen, you had mentioned the language that we were using around for-profit.
Right, I think that should be stricken from the fee schedule.
Right, so instead of saying for-profit, I think we were discussing saying just keeping it as private, strike for-profit and just leave private events.
Yes,
And then a little bit further down, it states for-profit, and instead of change that to private.
yes.
So we would strike here.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, and then a little further down.
And we would strike here, and we
Yep.
would just add private.
Correct.
So we're charging for a private party, recital, so on and so forth, but not a for-profit, which is,
Correct.
again, would be conflicting with not having commercial activities.
Right.
So, and this, again, I just had gone through this, and I think since we're cleaning it up, weekdays, anytime one of our, in this case, our custodial staff works overtime, they get paid time and a half.
Yep.
In this fee structure, it had a very specific amount. And so, this was adopted in 2015. So 5 years later, this $32 during the week and $41 on the weekend would not cover the cost. So again, trying to keep it general, based on the moving of salaries, I just inserted time and what have. And then for detail officers, I just put as described in the police collective bargaining agreement.
Derek, in case there
Yep.
needs to be in case there needs to be a fire person there, should we add police or fire? Police.
Yes, so say police or fire collective bargaining agreement. Yep.
Yes.
Wasn't there something in the policy itself that stated fire?
I think earlier in the document, there is something in there. I just don't recall if it has a dollar value associated with it.
You're right, there is something.
There is something. I don't believe there's a fire, excuse me, a number.
I'm trying to move this thing around at the same time.
Yeah.
Number C under 2.
So,
Ranging for the police and fire.
so is there a difference between the police detail, which is what, $59 an hour, and the, I've never seen a fire detail amount. Police detail has a set amount for detail.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like
it would
it's mentioned in 2C, but there's no money there.
Correct.
Right.
But a police detail is a certain amount, period. It's not time and a half, it's not holiday or whatever, it's a certain amount.
Right, and that's,
But
listen, and
fire
that's why
detail, I don't know.
I'd have to check the CBA for the fire detail, but as you can see
I don't know
right
if they
here,
have anything set up, Derek.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the CBA if they have they probably don't have a specific detail. It would probably be something like time and a half.
Time and a half.
regardless, the policy says that it's on the applicant would have to pay it. So whatever it is,
Yes.
they'd have.
But it also should be explicit in the policy itself.
So I guess the question is, do you want to add it to the bottom where it mentions the police detail, or do you feel like you've covered it sufficiently under 2C?
Maureen, it should be explicit in here because it is explicit. So are you talking about the amount? Because we don't know what the amount.
Yes, because a police detail is different than a policeman doing a detail for a party. It's something outside the realm of their jurisdiction.
Right, but if you
So
look up,
they have a different, they have a state scheduled pay.
right, but if you look at the fire detail, it says that you have, if it's required, which means if the fire chief wants to have a fire representative there, that the applicant has to pay for that, whatever you call it, whether it's a detail or whatever. It says
Right,
that
but they need a fire, I believe, a fire detail there if it's over a certain number of people in the building.
right, and it's up to the chief's discretion to do that. And this says that the fire EMS chief will require a police detail and or a fire detail.
Based on, well, if you read through the policy, it's different for the police detail than it is the fire detail.
It says right here, arranging for the police and or fire detail will be the responsibility of the applicant, and a deposit for same may be required. Permit requests with anticipated attendance level of more than 50 people, which is to your point, right? If more than 50 people, or with special circumstances that warrant review, will be forwarded to the Upton Police Department and the Upton Fire Department. So the police chief and the fire chief get involved if there's more than 50 people, and if at their discretion they can require a police detail and or a fire detail,
Yes.
which the applicant has to pay for, which is
The applicant would have to pay. You're right, Brett.
Is that what you mean? Because that's what's here. I just want to make sure we're covered.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that anything over 50 people, and they have to coordinate with the police chief and fire chief.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's what this says, but
Okay.
So we're good. We're good that 2C is sufficient. We're dotting the i's, crossing the t's. That's good like it is.
Yep.
and then just to go back, I agree with Steve on the insurance. I think it's better to just have the amounts in there. I like to see the amounts and see the numbers in here, and it's easy enough if we need to change it to go ahead and change it.
Do you want to just replicate the numbers that were in there?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I don't know, Steve, what you were thinking, but that would, I agree with you that it's better to have those in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, certainly I can't see it changing all that often. If it changes in 3 or 4 or 5 years, you know, a future board can address it at that point.
Yeah.
But I would think for now, as long as those are current numbers, I think we should just stick with them.
I agree. Anything else?
That's the entire document.
Beautiful. Nice work. So I'll take any motion to approve these changes, assuming that the two of you agree. I'm going to dissent because I disagree with the exclusion of allowing people to include toast or wine or alcoholic beverages at their events, but that's why there's 3 of us. So I'm happy to have the 2 of you make a motion and vote.
Maureen, are you good as the corrections that have been made? Are you good with that document now as it's written?
Well, I don't agree with the insurance part. But that's up, if that's the way you two want to go, that's fine. And
Yeah,
about the
if we
police,
want to vote on, if we want to vote on each piece separately, I mean, we can do that as well, but
well, I just want to go back to the police and fire, and you know, it has a lot to do with the bargaining contracts and all that. So I don't think we want to put any fee in there. And it has to be negotiated with the unions.
do you think
I don't
that's
know,
something?
Derek, what do you think?
That's why I was trying to keep, that's why I had written in the policy that we refer to the collective bargaining agreement for police. But if the board wants to plug in a specific dollar amount, just know that it's going to change probably in 6 months when we draft a new budget.
I mean, I'm fine with the document, everything we've discussed. I think, again, I think we've got it covered. So I'm fine with it here. I'll let you two work out the nitty gritty on those other topics. But I'm good with what we've got here. I think
I don't think we want to have to deal with the collective bargaining units every time they come up for new contracts.
So I think maybe we're confused. What is it you want to change, Maureen?
It has
Specifically?
to do with the police and
Are
their,
you looking at the
that
document?
one, oh, shoot, I lost you.
You just paused it.
we
No,
can
I
hear it.
didn't. I don't even see you anymore.
I know it.
Jen. Oh, what do I do? Ah, there you are. Go back to that town policy.
I just, give me 1 second here.
I think the intent of the document is basically, I think in layman's terms, we're saying that it's prevailing wage. It's whatever the prevailing rate is at the time.
No. Nothing is intent in government. There is no such thing with the prevailing wage because they're under a collective bargaining unit. So they can negotiate anything they want.
Prevailing number is, they're working in town. It doesn't matter where they're working, whatever the document is, they're working for that wage. Whatever that wage.
Under the 40 hours, yes, but not under extra detail.
Right, but we
If you guys could just look at the screen for 1 second. So I pulled up the police CBA, and this is why my goal was just to reference the CBA, because you can see right here, it's very explicit as to how details are paid out to our force.
Yeah.
This will change when this contract that we're looking at right now will expire in 6 months. They will renegotiate a new contract. And so if we put in a fixed number, and you can pick a number here, then we'll have to come back in a year from now and make the changes to those details. Now, honestly, I think we'll all forget about this in a year, and then somebody will apply for a permit, and then we'll be using old rates versus the newest rate.
Nobody's going to apply for a permit because we're not allowing alcohol, so nobody's going to want to have an event.
Derek, on page, as I'm sure you know, Derek, on page 12 of I just pulled up the fire CBA. It does discuss paid details as well. So, you know, I think if we say refer to both CBAs, will be covered without putting the information in this policy.
And that's the point, that these numbers are going to continue to change. So do we want to put in a fixed number, or do we want to just reference the collective bargaining agreements that are on a 3-year cycle to change?
We'll let Maureen answer that question. What would you like to do, Maureen?
I think it should be according to any contract agreements.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's-
I mean,
that's-
as the
that's what you
contract changes, this policy should change too.
So you just want to say then add fire to the language where the fee says, look at the police CBA, you want to just add police/fire CBA. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not, I don't know enough about fire detail. I know about the police detail because that's set by the state. I don't know what the fire detail, do they have something in their contract that says they get so much an hour for detail?
That's what
Yes.
Sandy just said.
Yes.
She said they do.
Yes. That's, Derek, is on page 12. Number 3, pay detail shall be for a minimum of 4 hours, and the bargaining unit members shall be compensated at the rate of pay equal to time and 1/2 their hourly rate.
But that's different than the police detail.
Correct. So if we
Police
put
detail
on,
is set by something else and fire is set by something else.
right. So do we want to just keep it open-ended on the last page and say, as described in the police and fire collective bargaining agreements? And then we can refer to those documents?
Well, let me ask Derek, is the police detail, off-duty detail in the bargaining units? I'm gonna kill you.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So
It is.
the police one is in there. It has a town detail and a outside detail reference in the CBA. And the fire CBA also reference a fire detail as well. So I
Okay,
think to
but
Sandy's point, if the screen that I've listed as the last page on detail offices, it could read as described in the police and fire collective bargaining agreements.
So we don't want to put any amounts of money in there at all.
Well, that way we
Or else
won't.
we'll have to come back every time they negotiate a contract.
Exactly.
No, I would agree with described in the police and fire collective bargaining.
I
Okay.
think that's kind of where we were about 8 or 9 minutes ago.
No, we weren't.
Yes, we were, Maureen.
It's okay.
When I said prevailing, I didn't mean prevailing wages. We always
Well,
think about
prevailing
according
wages is
to the
different than
document.
off-duty detail.
I'm
as
sorry,
signed by
I'm
the
really
document.
steep on
You
this
really
one.
want to.
You gotta get the government language.
Hold on a second. If you really want to get nitpicking, hold on there, Ms.
Okay,
Dwinell.
go ahead.
Just pump your brakes for a second there, kid.
Okay.
What do you want to, do you want to put Upton police detail? What if it's an out-of-town officer that works the detail? Then what do you want to do?
You have to pay an out-of-town officer
Hey,
on
guys, I'm gonna
off-duty
go to bed. Let me
detail is
know
the
if
same
you guys
as
need
they
me.
were in Upton.
What if their wage is negotiated higher?
Doesn't
Guys-
matter. Off-duty detail is set by the state.
This is fun, guys. It's after 10 o'clock at night.
I know, and I gotta be to work early.
Right. I think we're all getting a little punchy. So we'll add police and fire CBA agreement. Is that good, Maureen?
Yeah.
Okay. Steve, to your point, we're going to update the part of the policy that talks about insurance to include the actual amounts because you and I both like it that way. Yes? Okay.
Sounds
We're
good.
gonna delete all references to anybody having alcohol in the town hall because that's what the two of you want. Yes?
Yes.
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 Maureen, shake your head. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So good. So then with that, why don't we approve the policy and you two can approve it and vote on it and make a motion with the changes we just talked about. And then you can both vote yay and I'll vote nay, and then we can go to the town manager report.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the updated town hall use policy, subject to the changes that we have discussed over the last 30 minutes, but summarized
I'm not putting that
nicely
in the
by
motion.
our chairman.
No, Yeah,
Because
well, you hold up the meeting a lot too, you know.
We've all had our moments. Let's
We
be fair.
we have.
Even
All had-
Mazzelli and I, Maureen, I'm not going to argue with you.
Okay, second Maureen Dwinell, aye.
That's on
Majority
this-
action.
Huh?
Majority action.
Majority action, yeah.
Was that a nay, Brett?
Oh, that's
That was a nay from Brett.
I told you from day one. I mean,
I would like that. That should be emblazoned in the minutes.
My wife texted me from the other room. She's like, "Are you getting belligerent about the alcohol at the town hall again?" I'm like, "No, I'll stop.
Oh, God. All right, Derek.
Get us back on track here, Derek."
Bring it on home.
All right, well, it's late and I'm going to try to keep my comments very brief. But I do want to start off with COVID. We've had 128 cases to date. Currently, we have approximately 9 active cases. That's down from where we were. I think we were at a high of approximately 15 or 16. So we're starting to see a trend downward. But speaking with the Board of Health staff today, they believe that the reason why we had a spike, like many other communities, is because of the Thanksgiving holidays. They are stating that the State Department of Public Health is now worried about the Christmas holidays coming up, and they would project that we're going to see another spike within 2 weeks thereafter the Christmas holiday. The vast majority of the cases that we had in town were family clusters, which is why they think it's really related to the holiday itself. As you all know, the Pfizer vaccine has now been delivered throughout the nation. UMass received approximately 2,000 doses themselves that were administered to healthcare workers in long-term care facilities. The state's now waiting for the Moderna vaccine to be approved by the FDA. We're expecting that to take place in the next couple of weeks, which would then have a delivery within 24 to 40 hours thereafter. So phase 1 of the vaccination plan is focused on healthcare workers and first responders and those individuals that live in congregate facilities. And then the state's phase 2 plan is focused on public education, public works, and those frontline workers. And then lastly, phase 3, which we probably will see sometime in, I would imagine, February, March, I'd say early to mid-February time period, would be to the general population. The state has already established agreements with CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and even our local Board of Health office to administer vaccine to the general population. So more to come on that, but I thought I'd give you kind of a quick update as to where we are with COVID and some of the things that happened. So on more of a personal note, we have noticed that we have had more infections amongst our staff in the previous 2 weeks. We are expecting that we're going to see an increase in these cases, not only in the community, but certainly that's going to bleed into our staff as well. So there have been some town halls that have already started their max telework process, much like we did back in March when the governor basically shut everything down. I don't think we're there yet in Upton, but it's certainly something we're paying close attention to, given the fact that we've had about a half a dozen of our staff who have been infected since day one. So again, trying to protect them as much as possible until we can have a full vaccination method amongst our employees, which is going to take some time. So I'll keep you all posted on that evolutionary process. We're expecting a big snowstorm. Dennis has left, so we're expecting about 12 inches of snow in the next 24 to 36 hours. We've already had one big snowstorm, so trucks will be out there as always. We're going to watch the snow and see how that impacts our other services, whether or not we have to go to a max telework posture during the snowstorm. So we will keep you posted on that as well. At the last meeting, we talked about 2 major items. One, we had a conversation with cemetery commissioners around the Maplewood Cemetery. I was able to meet with the cemetery commissioners and the Maplewood Cemetery Association members yesterday, actually, to start to engage them in the process of what it would mean if the town were to take over the operations of the Maplewood Cemetery. So there were a lot of great questions that were asked at that meeting. I still think it's a little too early to start to negotiate an agreement. So I've been tasked with developing a series of questions that the Maplewood Cemetery Association should answer. Things like operational costs, some of the maintenance that may have been neglected over the years, some of the capital needs on that land, how many plots are still remaining that can be used, and then all the associated costs that go along with running an additional cemetery. So as we start to learn more, I will keep the board posted on that so that you can make a decision as to whether or not this is something in the best interest of the community. And then we also had a meeting yesterday with the Open Space Committee folks, Conservation Committee members, the Sudbury Valley trustees, and the Metacomet folks to talk about the acquisition of the Kelly property. As you can imagine, there's really 3 buyers involved in this, town of Upton, the state, and Metacomet. So we're trying to, one, save our limited resources with surveys, with legal costs, and closing costs. So that's why we're all trying to work together on trying to do this in the most efficient manner as possible. So we agreed yesterday that we would aim for a closing date of June 1st, 2021 on all 4 parcels. So again, I'll keep you posted on that. And then Zero Grove Street, we closed on Zero Grove Street this past Friday. We are now new owners of that property. You'll see by the end of this week, the vehicles will be removed. Got a little more work to do with the Conex, the 2 Conex containers. One is owned by the library trustees, and the other one is owned by the Thompson family, who are just trying to find a home for it. The trucks and the trailers should be gone by the end of this week. That's what I was told today. And then we'll be working with the LSP to do some further exploration of any potential remediation that's necessary on the property. We'll have to learn whether or not the weather plays a role into whether or not we can get that done this winter, or we have to wait till the spring. And then last, I just wanted to bring up that we received another grant for approximately $16,000 from Maya. This grant will be used to conduct a capital needs analysis of our town hall, our fire station, and our police station. This will be a full analysis of all of the capital equipment, so the HVAC systems, everything down to the doors and the windows, the replacement costs of those, and the timeline for when those pieces of equipment need to be replaced. That will be just another component of our capital improvement plan. As you know, the DPW, they had done their capital improvement plan for all their infrastructure. This analysis will focus on our buildings. And then, as you know, we've already completed one for all our rolling stock. So I'm thinking those 3 components will really feed into a very robust and comprehensive capital improvement plan for the next 10 to 20 years. So I don't know. I can tell you this, with the grant we received from Maya, they've never done this before. When I convinced them that this is something we wanted to go after, they said they would consider it a pilot program because no other town had used Maya dollars to do this. So they're watching us very closely to see if this is something they want to use as an allowable use for their annual grants for other municipalities moving forward. So again, I would hope that's going to launch probably after the first of the year, and that'll take a few months to complete. But as soon as that's complete, I will certainly report that back as well. Pending any questions, I'll turn this back to the board for questions.
No, that's great. Definitely good updates on all fronts. Nice job getting that grant. It's always interesting to be on the forefront of those things. It's just a testament to the work. So that's awesome, Derek. Cool. Anything else, Steve and Maureen?
No, great job, Derek.
Yep, good job.
My final comment would be 10 more days till Christmas.
Ugh.
My shirt size is typically an extra large. My shoe size is an 11. I'll take anything you can offer, and I look forward to getting your gifts. Money's good too.
Cash only.
Cash only. Are you guys all set for the holiday? Everybody good?
Hey,
I
Brett,
got all my Christmas shopping done.
Brett, just outside of the VFW, there's one of those big orange boxes. Try on anything you'd like. I'll be glad to.
That's right. Do they still have that there? I know they removed a lot of them.
I know this one at the Rose Garden.
They have one at the Rose Garden?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they do. There used
They've
to
got,
be one.
they've got a yellow one and a white one at the Rose Garden. So
Yeah,
Oh,
there used to be one up at the ice cream shop as well. I'm not sure if it's still there or not.
wow.
Kelly, Sandy, you guys all set for Christmas or what?
As set as we'll ever be, huh, girls?
Yep, the snowstorm is going a little bit into the shopping, but we'll get there.
No, I think it'll work. Online, a lot of online shopping on Thursday night.
That's what
Okay.
I'm doing, Sandy.
All
Nice.
right.
Do some more. I'll do some more, yeah.
The window's closing on that though, isn't it? With getting stuff in time.
No, they're
Oh,
still
we have plenty of
delivering.
time.
And I'll do my Instacart for grocery shopping.
Exactly.
I don't have to leave the house.
Really moving
You don't
forward with.
even want to know how many boxes have been to my house this week.
Oh, I hate
On
to
a
tell you how
first-name
many have
basis
been
with all
here.
the delivery people.
Oh. You know, you got 13 great grandchildren and 8 grandchildren and 9 kids. We had lots of boxes.
Lots. That's unbelievable. Very good.
Uh,
Derek, you good? You guys ready to go?
we're ready. I'm ready.
Yeah, my wife does all the shopping, so I just gotta show up. So we're ready to go.
You have to do a little bit, Derek.
We have negotiated agreements where we both have been satisfied.
Push me into doing all the rapping this year. I'm fighting back hard, but I don't think that's a battle I'm gonna win. Something tells me I better go get
Oh.
some stuff.
No, get gift bags.
We need to negotiate it. Just negotiate Christmas morning.
This
That's all.
COVID, you should have plenty of excuses to get out of those. Get out of those.
Exactly. This is the year, right? Like
This is the year. I
My
had
wife
an
and I
awful
are both-
Thanksgiving because I couldn't invite anybody over to the house.
Oh, yeah.
It was
My
great.
wife and I are both January birthdays, so we said, it's going to be a lean year for Christmas. Look forward
Sure is.
Yeah,
to lean.
Terrible.
good.
Mhm.
Well, I hope everybody has an awesome Christmas. Hopefully everybody's taking some time off or and gets to at least enjoy as much of it as they can given the circumstances. So good to see
To
everyone.
you and all your families also.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think we need
Merry
to take-
Christmas and happy holidays to all of you, to you and all your families.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy
Stay
holidays,
healthy,
everybody.
everybody.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
You gonna
Make a-
leave it up to me?
No, I got this. Sorry. I'm worried you're going to change the verbiage.
No, I wouldn't do that.
It's like town meeting. You have a 2-hour window, right, Kelly?
Yes.
Right? You have a 2-hour window. I think we've passed it.
Oh, you think
1-hour
so?
window?
Oh, the lights are dimming.
The lights are.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember the old trick, the little town hall office, the lights would go off at what, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever it was.
9 o'clock.
Fine, isn't it?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, yeah.
9 o'clock. Kelly had to run and turn them back on again.
Yes, I did.
Maureen, do you plan on seconding my motion? Any
Oh,
discussion?
did you make it?
I'll second.
I second the motion.
I third the motion. Unanimous action. Have a good one, folks.
Take
You
care,
also,
everybody.
everybody have a great holiday.
Bye.
You guys too.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thanks. Take care.